Hello guys, welcome back to my channel. As you can see in the picture today, let's start the story of what if Issei was abandoned and remade the world. Statistic. A boy with disheveled brown hair stood with a blank stare and was breathing heavily. His body was bleeding as black cracks on his body grew larger along with his pulsing veins. He was in a park, next to a somewhat destroyed fountain, which was leaking water that could no longer be held. Probably it was the boy himself who destroyed it. This could be proven by the crater that was made in the ground due to his punch. A black miasma with weeping spots began to emanate from his body as he began to growl. At the same time, a green jewel appeared in his left hand. Partner! Keep LMA. You need man's aid. Please, Issei gua. Spits blood. I just want the pain to end. The cracks widen and multicolored rays are emitted from its body. They begin to appear on the jewel, which has begun to crack and darken. That corruption or energy was affecting it. Statistic. A redhead was staring at a pillar of black and white energy rising into the sky. She fell to her knees in tremendous shock as her stomach churned with guilt. Alongside her were some of her friends and harem sisters, most of whom were elsewhere but were also in Ko and saw the pillar of energy. The strange thing is that they were all accompanied by other men who looked at it in a surprised and fearful way. People were paralyzed with fear and terror, while some ran out of instinct for survival, but their hearts were still drowning in fear and doubts about the events. What didn't help was the roar of hatred that began to be heard along with black lightning that descended from the black clouds that formed due to their statistic. Surzex fires a beam of power of destruction at Issei with a more monstrous form, with parts of his body showing draconic characteristics. Black scales were present all over his body, with muscles of a slightly disproportionate size and with his face also a little deformed that was divided between human and dragon. He growled and drooled as his gaze became lost in hatred, pain, and fury. He raised his left hand and fired a black beam that was about to collide with Mao Lucifer's destruction beam, but the demon's attack was losing against the dragon's attack. In fact, it seemed like it was being erased by the attack. The redhead was surprised by that and dodged the attack with speed. He was holding on to a level of strength slightly above what Issei was currently displaying, but his old Ototo was increasing rapidly, and was almost considering the idea of using his transformation. His thoughts were cut off when the boy began to speak between growls. Issei verimel horror reiras are no graro gra. He grabs his own head and black and white rays come out of his eyes. He screams as he widens his eyes, showing that the right one is completely white, along with a black galaxy in the center in place of the iris. His scales then underwent a strange change. They were fusing into a thick layer, quickly becoming predominant throughout his body, and it became larger, and white dots appeared on it, which strangely moved slightly. Statistic. Issei, now in one, begins to face his opponents and goes after the Dragon Kings with a white and black aura, but then Tannen, who was with the four free ones, spat large flames that with a wave of his hand, were simply redirected to the side, hitting the ground of the incredibly destroyed area of the underworld. Fafnir began to create several copies of himself while Yulong and Midgard Sorm charged their auras and fire breath respectively. Raising his arms and forming a T procession, Issei created a barrier that as soon as it was hit by the attacks, they were redirected towards the dragons who fired them without losing strength. Then, a black aura appears on Issei's current black body full of white dots, along with a white glow from his empty eyes. He then disappears in a black flash and then, 0.1 seconds, Tannen receives 300 punches scattered all over his body. His scales fly along with blood and flesh as his gaze becomes empty, and large holes appear where Issei's fists connected. He quickly focused his eyes on the copies of the Golden Dragon. 0.2 seconds, the hundreds of Fafnir clones had their heads COR. Statistic. Okay, this is taking a while. Let's speed it up. The screen zooms out and an author, more precisely Diego the Guardian, appears seeing a holographic screen coming from a sphere the size of a slightly cracked basketball with negative energy being removed and gathering in one of the entity's hands. Author POVs. I decided to speed up my analysis and filtered the most relevant events, like the boys the harem left, who knew about this, which beings Issei killed, Trihexa included, and mainly, the power Issei received from Alien X, F0 Den 0. Alien X, It was no wonder that the universe had to be frozen and that I was being assigned as a replacement author so that it could be reset and repaired. This universe could explode and damage several other universes close to it. Or in the worst case scenario, a new existential flaw might have appeared. Diego the Guardian sigh holy. When the Spiritverse Council members gave me the responsibility of resetting this universe, they weren't kidding when they told me I'd need luck. Even issei's existential code was corrupted. I take a look at the corrupted energy sphere. It was strange and different from the usual ones. I had helped other authors cleanse some universes from the influence of idiot authors and corrupted pillars, but it seemed like that energy felt different. In fact, it even felt familiar. Diego the Guardian, oh hell no. Did this come straight from the dark multiverse? I hope the ARR0MBD0 who took this is inside a Boku no Pico virtual reality. These idiots are doing more insane things every day. That was a very serious crime. In fact, calling it serious would be an understatement. The last time I saw something like that was with Paper Issei, who had received the Chaos Seed, but that was in the Wattpad verse, and I don't know what happened to the guy who did that. Diego the Guardian, what the hell, even if I reset this universe, it's quite possible that issei's path will turn him into someone insane. Mainly because of this corruption, I can't easily remove it, and even if I managed to reduce it, he would still be able to gain powers at least similar to Alien X. He could awaken a true dragon aura with a trace of reality, chaos, universe, or some like that. I rubbed my temples in an attempt to calm myself down. I couldn't just reset the universe. I needed to prepare some resource to be able to maintain the possibilities of Issei becoming a good person, as he should have been. Diego the Guardian, well, I can make some modification to this universe that is enough to fix and overcome the corruption so that it becomes non-existent. In fact, I think there might be a way for Issei to not become corrupted and still follow a path that makes him powerful. When I said this, the sphere that represented the universe flew into my hands, and with my aura I was able to repair the cracks in it. Using my left hand, some small spheres of different colors appeared coming out of the universe. These little spheres were Issei's former harem from this universe. Another group of girls who were turned into brainless idiots. Diego the Guardian, okay, let's get on with it. I mean throwing the spheres forward. They quickly take the form of the women they represented and some fall to the ground a little weak. Rias, Aquino, Asia, Kaneko, Irena, Zenobia, Rosweiss, Kuroka, Ravel, LaFay were slowly getting up. I decided to call only them since there would be too many to talk to. Besides, I need to know the others' personalities to be allowed to interact with them. The women looked around in confusion until memories flooded their minds. Memories of their world, their actions. Quickly, Rias and Asia were the first to collapse, vomiting everything they had in their stomachs. Half of them began to scream in pain and the others felt paralyzed as they struggled with empty eyes. Not wanting them to stay in that state, I used my psychic aura to calm them down. After a few seconds, they calmed down and started looking at each other. Until Aquino's empty gaze focused on the Gremry girl and a dark impulse took over her. Aquino, you! She screams, covering her hand with lightning. She would have hit her with a powerful electric attack if it weren't for a layer of aura that appeared surrounding her arm. And before she did anything, I made them float so they could pay attention to me and released some of my power to scare them. Diego the Guardian, hey, be quiet and listen to me. I speak with a dark aura surrounding me. They trembled in fear, obviously. I lowered them to their feet on the ground as they looked at me with doubt and fear in their eyes. Diego the Guardian, now that the children have calmed down and are aware of who their superior is, let's introduce ourselves and then talk business. I speak and create several armchairs for us. They are a little surprised at how fast everything is happening, but they decide to sit down. Asia, Diego the Guardian, oh sure, how silly of me. My name is Diego the Guardian, or just Diego. And I am an author and the fairy godfather who can grant your deepest wish. Of course it won't be for free. Rosweiss, author? Why do you call yourself a book writer? What is that supposed to mean? Diego the Guardian, very simple, Ross. In reality, I'm not very different from those authors who create stories and books. But in fact, I create things like this one that I have here. I show the sphere. Do you know what this is? Your world, in the palm of my hand, literally. Pretty beautiful, huh? It used to be all cracked, but I fixed it. Akino, wait. Are you saying that you can create worlds? Create entire universes? She asked, a little scared. Ravel, calm down. If this is our world, it was you who made us. Diego the Guardian, oh no, actually I was tasked with fixing that was destroying your world. But once I'm done, I'll be recognized as the new author of your world, since the old one must be suffering in the multiversal prison. But that's not important right now, but your real question. They were apprehensive when I said this. It was not to be expected, they were in front of a being much superior to them. But then, the leader of the group spoke up. Rias WH, what do you want from us? What does a being who can create, and probably destroy worlds expect to gain from being so beneath him? Diego the Guardian, very simple. I want you to fix the relationship you had in your old lives. The thing is, I'm not entirely sure that issei would have become someone with good sanity. So, besides making sure that the perverted young dragon doesn't get corrupted by his traumas, you and the rest of the other girls who liked him will have the chance to be happy together. Of course, now you won't have the influence of an idiot with an NTR fetish anymore. Irina, you mean, our actions were due to the influence of another being? Diego the Guardian, around a good part. Rias's plan, the choices that were made, like accepting the plan, were influenced by that, but everything after that, like doing the act with that bunch of randoms, was yours. In fact, if you think about it for a moment, you'll realize that you don't even know why you came up with this idiotic plan or why you accepted it. The next moment, they showed a shocked and fearful look upon realizing this fact. All that desire and thoughts came out of nowhere. Even though they wanted to collapse once more, they paid attention to the black sphere that was with me being placed in an energy cube and then passing through a portal. Diego the Guardian, okay, I sent the energy to my superiors. Now all that's left is to reset the universe while keeping your memories. Unless you don't want to see issei again, all we want to live with him, yes. They all scream in a desperate way. Diego the Guardian, okay. But just to let you know, there are going to be some demands. They looked at me hopefully. Let's sum it up. First of all, Rias, hi. Diego the Guardian, you need to swallow your pride. That's why you almost ruined your relationship with issei and the harem in that fight before your match against Serorg. Rias 2C. Depressive speech. Diego the Guardian, oh, and of course, you can have issei's purity. But you can be the second to do that if you can. Rias, okay, she says it in a tearful way. Akino HA, Kaneko, fair enough. Irina and Zenobia, what a blessing. Diego the Guardian, you guys needed to improve too. Neither of you have had any opinions of your own since the beginning of your relationship. All you did was follow Rias around like a bunch of idiots. Everyone's heads hung low, and they looked away. I think that even though I calmed their minds with my aura, it was enough to keep them from having another panic attack. Diego the Guardian, also, you'll have to decide who will be the first among yourselves. Now let's see, you can't force issei to become a devil, you have to ask him. You should try to keep the timeline similar to the original, but unexpected events will probably happen, and of course, you have to give issei proper training, in addition to, obviously, improving his relationship with Haida. Kuroka, it seems too simple, don't you think? Lefei, I think so too. It's not a complaint, but I think the price we have to pay to fix our lives doesn't seem right. Diego the Guardian, very well observed, Lord Pendragon. There are simply things I can ask, or rather, tell you to do later. Besides, do you really think that nothing I said can make a big difference? Did you know that there are universes in which issei is an angel? Everyone was shocked by that. Issei, her perverted dragon fiancé, as an angel? That was as surprising as it was strange. The image of the brown-haired boy wearing the church member's clothes and wearing white feathered wings appeared in their minds. It seemed like a rather cute sight. Especially if it was a version of the younger issei. Asia, Rias, and most of them blushed in embarrassment at the image in their minds, while Akino blushed and had a nosebleed at the thought of corrupting such a pure issei. Diego the Guardian, do you know what I mean? Issei can choose to become a demon, remain human, and there's even a chance that he won't even sacrifice his arm to defeat Riser. These details may be small at some point, but they're the ones that can define the course of his story and yours. The girls nodded as Akino wiped the blood from her nose. Despite that, they were a little nervous about what I would ask them to do. Diego the Guardian, well, you better get ready. You have less than 2 months to get close to issei. I say this as auras cover them. You'll have help from other girls and women who also like issei, and I'll give you back your memories. I wish you luck, you'll need it. The next instant, they turned back into colorful spheres and I placed them back into the sphere of their universe. Using my aura, I make the sphere expand and cover the entire space I was in. As soon as everything was ready, a multicolored aura covers me and I gather it in front of me. Then, a button of various colors appears to me. Reset universe. Smiling, I press the button and the entire universe and everything in it begins to move differently until it stops and then returns to normal. Using my aura again, I make some screens with various information appear for me. Now I should make some of the necessary modifications. As I looked at what the screens showed, everything looked similar to the original. However, I had to change several things. First of all, a change so that regardless of what issei chooses to become, he will become part dragon. This will be a shock to his parents, especially Goru. Now, about Tiamat's actions. Although I don't know much about how she acted in the original, I'm going to make sure that her relationship with issei isn't something comical, as some authors told me. In addition, I will need to include several other resources to create training methods, include some smaller arcs and make more mythologies appear that should have appeared. But I still need to organize this point, as well as Tiamat's. I move the screens so another one with a keyboard appears and sigh as I start typing some notes. Diego the Guardian, alright, let's get started. This is your first DxD universe, Diego, don't mess it up. Author POVs off. DxD Multiverse Earth 079R. State of the universe reset. Quality stable. Break of space and time. A teenager's room appeared as a strange alarm began to repeat over and over for the person in the bed to wake up or the little girl's voice would kiss him. Very lazily and reluctantly, the brown-haired youth turned off his cute girl-themed alarm as he rubbed his eyes sleepily. He got up and opened the window of his room, and for some strange reason, he felt very light when he felt the sunlight on his skin and happy when he saw the view of his city. Issei, what a strange feeling. This is the first time I've woken up without having a naughty dream. But it's not bad. I hope to wake up like this more often. DxD Multiverse Earth 079. Status of the universe abandoned. Quality almost destroyed, can still be reset. DxD Multiverse Earth 079R. Ko City, 1:30 a.m. A red-haired girl with incredibly non-active curves, who was naked by the way, woke up abruptly and struggled as if her life was in danger. She looked around the room she was in, the room she lived in before meeting issei. A strange feeling passed through her. A feeling of displacement in that place, as well as a certain coldness in her chest. But before she could continue, she remembered that this was the past. And better yet, before issei met that fallen. Before he had his emotional and trust issues. Before she continuously hurt his heart. Rias, no. Don't think about it. You might break everything together with other people. You might make issei fall in love with everyone again. Prepare him properly. Look at the digital clock. I think I should lie down for a bit. It'll be better to see this at school tomorrow. Break of time and space. Rias took a long time looking at herself in the mirror, analyzing every detail of her body and her clothes. She removed any specks of dust or dirt from her school uniform with magic and took most of her time choosing underwear. She selected several sets of different colors, shapes, and details. She put on and took off 3 sets every minute, thinking about which one would please her brown-haired boy. Even though it is not yet time for him to see these clothes. Fortunately for her, the redhead wasn't the only one with the same problem. When she met Akino on the way to school, the hybrid had slight dark circles under his eyes, a sign that he had been up all night. She was also agitated, but she tried her best to hide it. When they met Himejima, she was babbling questions about her appearance and how to get issei's attention. Gremory already realized that she wasn't the only one with problems, and this certainty was fully realized when the two met Kaneko. In addition to forcing herself to stay awake, a white-haired young man kept turning his head around in every direction in search of Haedu. And lastly, a small but important detail was that the black ribbon on the collar of the school uniform was not being worn by the young Nikomata. Furthermore, the uniform itself was all wrinkled and untidy, which was extremely rare because Albina was one of the most organized and serious. The 3 girls looked at each other, seeing their gaze. They could feel just by looking into those same eyes that they were the same as in the past, but they were still somewhat unsure about how they should speak to each other. In the end, they stood in the middle of the street for a few minutes, only to continue their journey to the academy in an uncomfortable silence. And that's how it continued even after they arrived at the school building. But the silence between them was broken by the screams of fangirls and looks of admiration coming from most of the girls and looks of desire from the male audience. Akino, I had forgotten how everyone looked at us. You talk in a tiring manner and look at the students of Ko Academy. Kaneko, those looks are mostly fake. She speaks quietly, only for the three of them to hear. Most of them think they can meddle in our lives with the excuse of protecting us. Rias, was it, always this annoying? After we started living with issei, I started to ignore it, she said thoughtfully. Well, it doesn't matter. Let's go to our classes, then we'll look for him. They reluctantly agreed to their king's order. They still didn't have complete trust in the redhead, but they were at least satisfied with the actions of that powerful being. In the old reality, none of them had the chance to fully enjoy the opportunities to give themselves completely to the younger Haida. And now that Rias was forbidden from being Issei's first experience, they were finding that kind of thing fair. But despite that, they still needed to decide which of them would be the first. But they were still worried about their other harem sisters who Diego said would also return with them. Some like Ravel, Yasaka and Roswise didn't give much reason to worry so much, but Ingvild had the devil's sleeping sickness, which was something to worry about. However, the author said that the timeline of their world would be similar to the original, so it is possible that the last Leviathan must meet Issei again in the park. Despite this, they had to keep calm in this quote. They had to plan everything carefully. Time lapse. The girls were heading towards their club building, but first they were heading towards a more likely place to meet the brown guy, the Kendo Club's clothing. The three of them were behind distant trees, but they could see the place very well. They were quick to hide when they heard male voices, but only two voices, Issei's friends, Matsuda and Motohama. Just them, which left the two of them with their heads down and worried and in their heads due to fear. What if Issei was in another academy? That wasn't impossible, especially since the universe was redefined and changes like that can happen. But his thoughts are cut off when the two begin to talk. Matsuda, come on. Higher up. That's it. Motohama, hey man, let me see too. Just because Issei had to stay in the library during break time as Kaisha's peacemaker doesn't mean you'll get his share. Matsuda, oh, F off. Even if Issei was here, I'd go before I kicked you if I had to. Besides, he hasn't been with us for a week. Do you really think it would make a difference? The two of them argued for a few minutes while the girls from the occult club came out of their hiding places. They quickly reached their club building and went straight inside. Kiba wasn't showing any signs of showing up, so it was safe for them to talk at the moment. They analyzed a short conversation between the two as they thought about what little they had discovered. Rias, just the fact that Issei hasn't been with those two for a while is already something different. But staying in the library under Sona's command is something strange. Akino, yeah, I can't imagine what Isuken did to Sona or punished her in any way. Maybe it's something related to his perverted moments. Kaneko, it would be very obvious. But is that really the case? Before he joined the entourage, we knew nothing about him. This sentence affected the three girls a little, mainly because it was yet another truth. They had just gotten closer to the Dragon Boy after he was already part of the team and had little knowledge about his personal life other than his bad reputation. Rias was going to say an idea to solve this, but someone knocked on the door saying they were going to come in. It was Kiba, who was smiling and greeting his club mates and entourage. Now that all the pieces were placed in the building, Rias started a small meeting to set a training regimen for everyone to increase their strength. The Queen and the Rook knew about the reason for this training regimen, but Gremory had to tell a lie now that the Blonde Knight was present. A leader of the group said that she saw a certain sloppiness from all the members of her peerage, and she herself was seeming to be stagnant at a certain level of strength, so they needed a routine. In addition, she was also thinking about increasing the members of her club. What Kiba found a little strange about this attitude of his master and Kaneko, obviously pretending, casually with his blonde friend, but saying that he agreed on certain points due to the fact that they only fought against stray devils, but they only received these types of requests in a week or two. Rias also said that it wasn't just that. She confessed to her peerage that she was afraid of her arranged marriage being brought forward, which may very well come to fruition due to her time in the human world and the impatience of the advisors. Kiba, but Bucho, do you already have candidates as members in mind? Rias, not at the moment. I'm focusing on creating individual training for all of us. So I want all of you to carefully consider whether there are as many students or contractors who have placed orders as possible. Akino, will we immediately inform Bucho-sama of any such individual? Rias, only after a long analysis. We need to be sure of who to recruit. For now, do as I said and look for someone who has some potential, even if it's minimal. Her servants nodded as the redhead instructed them to return to their rooms. Rias and Akino were walking together to their rooms, talking quietly. Akino, do you really think Kiba didn't suspect anything? That kind of thing isn't your style, at least at the moment. Rias, I used my forced marriage. That's enough reason to justify even desperate actions. At that time I was quite impulsive, and you all knew that. Akino, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I can see you doing something like that. She stopped by her king's arm. Akino, Rias, what? The redhead pointed forward and the brunette fell silent with uneasiness. They saw the person they were looking for, Issei Haidu, along with the student council president who was checking his protection in the library. Sona, and what was the lesson learned? Issei, it's wrong to sleep in the library and in class, even for a short time. Speak with your head down, son. Great. You've reduced your depraved attitudes towards your two friends quite a bit. Don't make me have to focus on you unnecessarily. Now go back to your room, she says as she leaves for her own room. Issei selects with a tearful voice and turns to go to his class as well. He looks ahead and puts on a doubtful look. Issei, huh? That's weird, I thought someone was staring at me. Well, whatever. I guess I'd better not keep watching anime or playing games until late. Today I got away with it just because I was good, he says to himself, not noticing the two girls who were hiding on the stairs next to him. The two had hopeful and happy looks from the quick conversation between Citri and Haidu. They noticed several good and doubtful things about Issei from this redefined reality. He still studied at this school, he seemed to have the same perverted personality. Citri was just punishing him for being one of her responsibilities, which could indicate that they had a senpai and kohai relationship. Probably wanting to keep the boy in line, he was still friends with the other two boys. He really wasn't going to spy on the girls with the other two for some unknown reason. Another change was what he said out loud. Normally he could be watching hentai or eroge games. They had already seen his secret hideout full of this type of material. But from what I saw, he was not talking about this type of work. Rias, he is so close, and yet so far. Akino, the worst part is that he has no connection with us. Even if we try to get close to him, he'll think it's all a joke. Rias, don't worry. We can rebuild the relationship we have with him. I'm very sure of it, we just have to do everything right. Akino, speaking of which, how do you plan on dealing with that and his recruitment? Rias, we'll talk about it when the three of us are together. But we need to plan this calmly and hope that the others don't do anything rash. Space break. Various places. Irina and Zenobia trained hard, using weights on their arms and legs while constantly hitting each other with their weapons and using their special abilities. Shida's sword quickly turns into an axe and the orange part jumps over the blue one. She manages to get the blow from her teammates, and when they move away from each other they fall to the ground on their knees due to extreme fatigue caused by the liters of sweat that run down their faces and wet areas from their training paths. These outfits were very simple and light, almost the same as the ones they wore on missions, except they didn't have as many details. Irina sat down as she released Excalibur Mimic and left it beside her, and leaned back a little. Zenobia thought about doing the same, but could only stay cross-legged on the floor, but with Excalibur Destruction in her hand. Irina, wow, I didn't remember how much effort I had to put into those workouts. It's been so long that I don't even remember being able to sweat like that. Zenobia, yes, superhuman strength is kind of lacking, but I won't complain about being completely human again, even if it's just temporarily. Irina, well, whatever. Since we'll have to reincarnate after the attack on Ko, let's at least make sure we get out of there alive so we can meet up with Anata again. Zenobia, and then we visited our mating sessions with Issei to get more chances of having a baby. He spoke confidently and decisively. Irina, I need to talk some sense into her before the day we go to Ko arrives. It's a shame Daigo-sama forbade us from showing up early. What the dragon's childhood friend was talking about was that my boss, the new author responsible for his universe, was forbidding him from going to the city of his love and knowing them long before the right time. Although he could do something as grand as a telepathic message, the author opted for a simple approach: a small piece of paper with the following order. Do not apply it to Ko until the same event as in your original timeline. The only exception is when there is an order from one of your bosses in situations that cannot be avoided. This is mainly for you, Kuroka. I've seen alternate versions who also had their worlds reset, taking advantage of this situation and going to Issei's house to abuse him while he slept. Needless to say, the black cat let out a speech of extreme hatred, in addition to some non-specific insults to hear. Luckily she was in a forest in Europe, so she could scream since she didn't use her supernatural abilities. Others like Ravel, Elmenhild, Lefay, Canoe and others were trying hard not to yell at the people nearby to unfairly vent their anger. Ross Weiss and Asia were having depressing moments and were jealous, especially of the three main girls of Team Gremory, for being the first supernatural girls that Hayato would meet. At least the blonde would meet the boy in a few months or weeks. However, some women were like Yasaka, who was analyzing the part that talked about the exception, the first part at least. She was a faction leader and could very well make an excuse to attend a meeting that would take place in Ko. But she didn't just say about the situations that couldn't be avoided, but taking orders from superiors was something that was a bit complicated for her. She even had a superior, being the goddess of the sun, Amaterasu. She sent reports on the state of the Yukai faction and interactions with other factions, and it was the goddess herself who gave permission for the demons to stay in Ko. Could a leader of the Shinto gods appear for the treaty? It was quite possible due to the unpredictability of the timeline. However, she would not rush into it and respect this rule for now, but she would not prepare herself in case something out of the ordinary happened. It's a pity that for Gabriel it was almost torture. She couldn't even think about the idea of getting close to Hayato because there was a chance she would fall. Because she still had her memories, she had a somewhat different mindset, mostly because of her guilt and self-hatred. But the self-proclaimed Diego the Guardian said that most of her actions were manipulated, so that eased her worry a bit. Fortunately, she could go to Ko after Kokobil's attack on the city. But again, the bad part is that the most she could do is pray and wish good luck to Issei and his friends and companions to overcome the two battles and events they will experience. Unfortunately, minimal changes have occurred in some people, both human and supernatural beings, and even objects that they never imagined encountering in their normal lives. In addition to changes in objectives and means of achieving them that could alter the balance of a war, certain time had passed and the city of Ko was already being graced by the brightness of the stars in the night sky. While children and adults slept peacefully, the sleepy young Hayato was being watched by a little black and pink bat through his bedroom window. It was Bat who was followed hidden along with a small white cat that indicated where the dark-haired man lived and who was no longer there. The two family members were watching over the boy at the request of their respective masters and following a schedule. During the day, the white cat watched over him, while the little bat took the night shift. Furthermore, since the boy was being watched, the girls from the DxD team were still at the club, and were calmer and more rational when planning their next moves. Well, actually, one of them was being rational. Akino, remind me again why my plan is bad? Rias, because we need to form a stable relationship with Issei. And we won't be able to do that if we just drag him to a motel or knock him out and tie him to a bed. Akino, but meeting him by chance on a train and using hypnosis on people so that they push him towards you and accidentally leaving his groin right in your rear is a good plan, isn't it, Rias? Really? Rias, that was just a fantasy I had for after our date. Stop repeating everything I whispered. Kaneko, those two never come to a consensus. Actually, looking back now, I feel kind of stupid for not having told Issei about their advances and only blows landed on the wrong person. Those two are as perverted or even worse than him. She thinks with a quick sigh. The three of them were trying to come up with plans and analyzing what steps they should take. First, they analyzed Rias's old plan and highlighted all the ruined things that had been discovered: Issei's trauma and death, Asia's death, difficulty in developing the harem's romantic relationship, etc. That's why they were now together discussing the right path, without causing too much psychological damage to Issei and drastic repercussions on the timeline. They had a good basis at the moment. Find Issei somehow to be alone, explain about the supernatural world, or convince him to join his peerage and have him awaken the boosted gear and train him. Not necessarily in that order, they could make him wake up and teach him how to use his gear as a proof of trust. However, they were at a standoff about where to have their first interaction. The school was making it the least suitable place, due to the annoying eyes and ears of the students. But of course they could ask Sona for help, who would also need several excuses and explanations. In this case, they should focus on a simple approach. One that Kaneko herself thought of while the other two argued over who was being immoral. With a loud, fake cough, the white-haired Nekishu caught the two's attention. Kaneko, now that you two aren't fighting pointlessly and I have a good idea of what we can do, we can come up with a plan. Ryusa, really? Congratulations. Wait, shallow? Akino, if I wasn't interested in your idea, I would complain. Kaneko, let's just put our summoning paper in his backpack or pants pocket. Or we can even have Bucho's familiar deliver the paper like in the original schedule, but find a way to do the summoning in his room or at night. Rias was thoughtful for a few seconds as she analyzed what the cat girl said and analyzed the situation in her head, coming to the conclusion that it was a good idea for the current situation. Rias, yeah, we can do that. But which one of us will go? You, Kaneko, are still a bit inexpressive and one of the ones who can get tangled up in a long explanation. You're more of the short and direct type. Besides, Akino and I can't handle it if we go alone, and maybe if we form together, I don't know if it would be enough for one of us to support the other. The other two girls had to accept the truth told by their king. The three of them had trouble talking to Issei separately. And if it were just the two of them, it might have had a less bad, but still horrible, outcome. Therefore, the most correct thing would be if the entire occult club could talk to Haidu, including Yudo, so that they can force themselves to remain calm and have control of the situation. They are essential to keep calm while talking. Any mistake in the conversation could give the wrong impression or make the brown one get scared. So keeping the night blonde was a precaution. Akino, in that case, I think I have an idea of what to do. And no, it's not naughty at all. Ria-sama, okay. Akino, so, these are the steps we must follow first. We must place our summoning paper in a place where he can find it. Kaneko, as I said before, we can use the places and ways I said, but we can also leave the paper at his house right away. Akino, exactly. Then enter the second step, let's have him summon one of us, and then we'll explain to him about the supernatural world, and that he's someone with a lot of potential. Rias, that's good, but we'll need an explanation as to why the paper is in his house, not to mention that only one of us should be summoned. Think for a moment. Actually, I think I know what to say in a dialogue. Yeah, leave that part to me. Akino, well, you were the first to explain about our lifestyle in the past, so I guess we should have to respect those details. Kaneko, that way, we just need to convince Issei-senpai to join our peerage, become a devil, and then train enough. Rias, exactly. We'll talk about his sacred gear, and after a few hours of conversation, we'll ask him to meet us here at the club building. That way, we just need to explain and convince him to join us. Akino, that sounds like a promising plan. But he might still deny our proposal. Kaneko, maybe we can highlight to him how dangerous life in the supernatural world is, especially for those who possess Longinus, and give him some time to think. Ryusai, yes, unfortunately, that's a truth we have to face. But despite that, we can train it. Speaking of which, I recommend some magic books that can help us improve. Akino, magic books? That makes sense. Most of the books we have here are about history and mythology. Rias, yes, although there are few of them, they will be useful in forming a solid foundation for IC. One of them is mainly focused on increasing and controlling demonic power. Kaneko-senpai has always been very good at the imaginary magic attack part. Considering that most of his abilities were personalized demonic powers, if he had a larger reserve, he could have a much wider variety of attacks. The three girls were confident in their plans, and Rias in particular was proud of the precautions she was taking for her beloved's growth. The books she requested were basic knowledge, but they were crucial knowledge for the Red Gauntlet wielder. One of them also contained the basics of fire magic, and even if Rias couldn't teach Issei, his knowledge would increase and that would be enough for now. But the main thing was to increase the demonic power when he joined, that is, if he accepted the deal. They have to convince him somehow. Time skip next day. Issei was running to school while some people were a little more agitated due to some promotion at a supermarket. At least that's what he saw happening after passing by one that seemed quite crowded. Another slightly strange thing he noticed was a woman wearing a red dress with white details at the end of it, a yellow tie in the bust area and black details that are unique bat wings on the back and shoulders. She seemed to be handing out flyers to people passing by, but when her gaze fell on him, it seemed like her smile became very bright and her eyes sparkled. She started running towards him, waiting for him. Woman Ye. Despite liking the idea of receiving attention from an extremely beautiful and mating woman, he had trained his mental toughness to contain his honesty to his full desires that he was having. Furthermore, he was almost late for his academy, and the student council president was scary when angry, so, in addition to his own self-control, he was using his fear to help him. Woman No, young man. My precious boss will be mad at me if I let a young man with potential and great desire get away from me. She says this while holding Issei's shoulder with her left hand and a paper with a strange circle to hide. Issei, wait? Potential and great desire? The second one is true, but where did she see potential in me? He said to himself, focusing his attention on the woman now. Woman, listen, young man, my job is to distribute these papers to fulfill the wishes of our clients. And because of my experience, I can tell who has a chance of being a good client or not. And you could be a really big fish. She says, handing him the paper. Issei, so what exactly do I need to do with this? He asked confusedly. Woman, use it when you are at home and alone. That is the best time to use our pamphlet, and it will respond to your wishes. See you next day. Strive to grow to your fullest. After she left to find more customers, Issei put the flyer in his pocket and ran back towards his school. Despite being a little awkward, he enjoyed a quick chat. One person said he had potential for whatever, but that made him somewhat happy. The last person who put any faith in his abilities was his childhood friend, Shidu. One of the other people were his paternal grandmother and grandfather. In fact, after he stopped to think about it, he didn't remember when his parents had said something similar. In fact, no one had much faith in him these days, a certainty that he had a lot of time, but he was a little happy about the recent meeting. That really cheered him up. Time break. Young Hayato was initiated into the library and began drawing in a notebook whatever came to his mind. Of course it wasn't the notebook he used for school, he wasn't that stupid. Looking at the very detailed dragon head he drew, he saw that he could easily obtain skills that could be considered useless easily. The most useful things he learned to do were household chores like cooking. On the bright side, this kind of thing kept his mind busy, and he also got to create his own images of characters he liked. Well, he was torn between two drawings he had made, one of an anime character and the other of a web series. He stared at them while wondering which one he should try to make a version with colors. Issei, let's see, both Hinata and Ruby are cute, but because of Ruby's scythe, it might take me longer to finish. Although I did make Hinata's in more detail. Sigh. I'll think about it later. He says confusedly on the pages. Relaxing more in his chair, he thought about the pamphlet he had received, but decided it was best to follow what the woman said. Issei, that's pretty weird though. The way she talked about that role was really strange. What's strange? A monotonous female voice spoke. Issei, well, there was a woman in a strange outfit who told me about a pamphlet that would fulfill my de. Wait, who? A girl with white hair and yellow eyes stood behind him. She wore cat-shaped hairpins in her hair and a school uniform, making it obvious that she was studying at the academy. But Issei followed her. And in the next instant, his blood ran cold. Issei Kaneko Tujo? Isn't that the first-year girl who's considered the academy's mascot? Kaneko, huh? Hey, senpai, what are you doing? His face turned pale. He began to look out of the corner of his eye to see if there was anyone else in the room. Issei, she's talking to me, right? SSO, is she? There are some really extreme fans like Grimora-senpai and Himejima-senpai, right? If I get close to that girl and someone sees me, won't I be lynched alive? I know I haven't done anything suspicious in the past few weeks, but still. Kaneko, you still haven't answered me. He spoke in his monotone. Issei, I'm just drawing. Nothing suspicious or strange. He says, trying to defend himself out of instinct. Kaneko drawing? She asked with some curiosity. Can I see it? Come a little closer. Issei was a little apprehensive about the girl approaching, but she looked at him in a strange way. After that, he moved away a little from his chair and let the white-haired girl look at his drawings. Everything would be fine since there was nothing inappropriate. He was still a pervert with excessive honesty, but he knew where to put his private files. Kaneko seemed quite interested in the drawings her future male had made. She was quickly reminded of the miniature statue he had made of her master in the original timeline. She appeared to see a very detailed dragon head, and after some drawings, a couple of cats appeared sleeping together. She thought that was a sign, a good sign. Kaneko, they're quite detailed. You are surprisingly good. Issei, thank you? Some people are a bit skeptical about this because of, well, certain reasons. Speak a little calmer. Kaneko understands what he meant by that. She already imagined that even in this new reality the brown one would be ignored and unfairly judged for his personality. Honestly, now that Kaneko knew the brown-haired boy, how kind and honest he was, the girl couldn't stop seeing how hypocritical the students here were. Her senpai was one of the few who received hate in school because he didn't know how to lie about his desires. But in reality, Kaneko would bet that there were people who were just as bad as Issei, even the girls who lost him disgustingly. For the love of the former head of Christianity, they already wrote a yaoi novel where he and Kiba were a main couple. She already read a masterpiece chapter, and it was incredibly explicit, and she doubted that Issei would have such sadistic attitudes. At least not being completely sane. However, her body becomes stiff when she sees the drawings of the two girls that Issei was selling earlier. For some reason, these two girls were active or some kind of alert in her head. She didn't understand why. They were just hand-drawn drawings of two fictional characters, but these two probably were or would be the cause of some problem. Kaneko, those two, do you like anime? Issei, look, I know it doesn't seem like it, but I have a wide taste for different works of different genres. And just for the record, this comes from a web series. Both are animations, but they are different categories. Kaneko remained expressionless, but a drop fell behind her head. It seemed like he really enjoyed watching some fiction. In fact, he even seemed like his bucho when it came to Japanese culture. Kaneko-senpai, you're a bit strange saying that so seriously. It happened, he felt an arrow pierce his chest. Kaneko, but honestly, it seems like you have more hidden layers. Issei, huh? Where did that come from? He asked himself. Kaneko, see you later, senpai, see you later. Issei, see you later, Kaneko-kun. He spoke in a sweet tone, but then he realized how he called her. Sorry. You see, she's already gone. Geez, I think I just saved a kohai for good. Well, it's not like that's going to change anything. He said the last part dejectedly. Outside the library, Kaneko placed her hand on her chest as the way Issei called her repeated. She blushed a little, but quickly tried to compose herself. Knowing Issei's personality at this point in the timeline, he probably spoke like that out of reflex. Even so, she really liked it, and maybe he found it a cute kohai, gaining some of his attention. And probably that would make it easier for her to form a friendship with him. But she also found a certain fear and much welcomed it in the end. That was a little strange. She expected him to be surprised by a pretty girl, or any girl, approaching him. But that occurrence was worrying, not on the same level as Rainer's trauma, of course, but it was worrying. Kaneko, I'll have to report this to Bucho. Also, I think I'll have to tell her about that strange feeling. Think about it for a bit. I think you'll try to put it off until later. If Senpai uses the summoning slip tonight, Bucho will meet him and convince him to go with her to the club. She left towards her room. Despite feeling a slight discomfort with the doubts that were surrounding her, she kept her head steady. Rias was deep in thought about what Kaneko had just told her, and beside her, Akino was biting her nails. Issei's reaction wasn't anything too extreme, but she thought her rook had done well to warn her. She couldn't explain it, but she also had a strange feeling about the drawings Issei made, and clearly Akino is having it too. She couldn't explain it clearly, but when she tried to associate her issei with the name Hinata Hyuga, it gave her a very painful tightness in her chest. That was weird. They knew they were just characters, but still, Akino, ugh, I don't understand why I'm like this. They're just drawings of some anime girls. It's not like they're real or magically appear and start in the name of the biblical god. Rias, wait, what? Akino, isn't it obvious? This is something done by that author who reset our world. Kaneko said it was something instinctive. The same thing happened to us. I feel very uncomfortable with the idea of issei being around these people. But I don't understand why. Kaneko, but why would he do that? We can't just ask him about something so trivial. The other two agreed with that. That being was a superior entity that thought and acted in ways that were strange to them. Besides, what would they call an author? You just need to ask nicely and I can talk to you. When they realized the origin of the voice, they saw the said author who was now in charge of their universe. And he was eating a tub of chocolate ice cream while he was floating and lying in the air. Diego the Guardian. Hey girls. I've been checking up on you guys and I have to say you're doing surprisingly well even at the beginning. I thought you'd get a little sloppy, but you're already looking for ways to strengthen yourselves and issei. Well done, I said, putting a spoonful of ice cream in my mouth. Rias, Diego, you're here, she said in surprise and slight fear. Diego the Guardian. Well, you wanted answers and here I am. Also, I would like to talk about this feeling you had. Akino, so can you talk about it? Diego the Guardian. Sure, actually, it was kind of a joke on my part. You know those drawings issei made? It was kind of a way for me to tease you girls about some people from other universes that I saw. Kaneko, did you just plant this discomfort in us just to scare us a little? That seems really childish. Diego the Guardian. Maybe. But I did it that way for fun and also because it was a more passive way of increasing your determination. Akino, why would drawings of some fictional characters make us more motivated? Diego the Guardian. Because these two become issei's girlfriends and wives in other universes after he gets over your betrayal. After that, the three of them become petrified and their eyes widen as much as possible. Their lips tremble and their eyes seem to tear up at the thought of issei surpassing them, and they become sad when remembering their betrayal, even if it is due to someone else's influence. But still, Diego the Guardian, relax a little. Although they exist in other universes, they won't appear in this one and they won't fall in love with your issei. Although, now that I think about it, the number of alternate universes in which issei and other girls, but mainly Hinata, get together is being created and growing in great numbers. Okay, now he wasn't helping much. Not only were they worried about re-establishing a relationship with issei, but now they also had to worry about better candidates. Diego the Guardian, for the love of God, relax. I said it won't happen in this universe, even if it's only happening in others, and it's something that's very necessary. Considering that the DxD multiverse is practically infested with foreign pillars. Akino, foreign pillars? Is that important? Diego the Guardian, not for you, but for me and other morally minded authors, it's a huge headache. Several universes are doomed because of this. But well, that's the author's problem, not yours. The girls nodded their heads more relaxedly, but curious about what the author was talking about. But he was very calm about the subject so they wouldn't interfere. Although now he had stopped eating the ice cream and was thoughtful. Diego the Guardian, actually I think I could become the pioneer of the shinobi issei or remnant issei business in this multiverse. But I'll have to ask permission for that. Well, until next time girls, remember to keep your head on straight and think clearly, until later. After saying that, he disappears in a blue glow, leaving the three of them a little surprised and confused by what he said. Issei shinobi? Issei remnant? What was that supposed to mean? Rias urg, let's just focus on our issei and our world. If I start thinking about the multiverse my head will hurt. Akino, yes, let's go. Kaneko, it's the best. The three of them quickly gave up on the incredibly confusing and probably sensitive topic the blue-haired author mentioned. Time lapse. Issei POVs on. I had a relatively strange day, a pleasant day. I met a beautiful woman in costume who complimented me. Kaicho didn't fight with me. I didn't follow Matsuda and Motohama and consequently I wasn't beaten. I took a nap in the library after finishing some drawings, and along the way I met and talked to a very cute girl who is also my kohai, and I even managed to perform better in class. And that's where the strange thing is. Everything was going incredibly well, even in the small details. He didn't even hear any nasty and unnecessary comments during the time he spent at school. Normally I would have even experienced a simple embarrassing event, like slipping and falling on my butt or something like that. But I even got a coin. This is not normal. Where are the bad luck and the comical mistakes? I'm sure something bad is going to happen. This is a sign, It has to be. I'm completely sure about it. Well, whatever, I will face the retaliation that the universe sends my way like a man, just like my Otusan and my late Gigi never taught me. I finally arrived at my house. For some reason the door felt cold. A feeling that I only recognized on a few occasions. Issei aren't Tusan and Kazan? I opened the door and noticed the silence on our property. Yes, I was right. Recently, they both had been working late and away from home. My father still works in the office with overtime, but my mother had stopped being a housewife and was now working in a restaurant as a cook. This happened a few months ago, although I don't really understand why they don't want me to help. In fact, I don't really understand why they're both working so hard either. They don't know, but I've already seen the bills and the tuition for my school. Plus I know how much they both earn, and I know that my father's salary alone was enough to support us. It was strange that out of the blue they both called me to talk about their new jobs and told me not to worry when I asked if I should get a part-time job. It wouldn't be hard for a student to work at a coffee shop, video store or something like that. I would just have to be careful with my school schedule. But they flat out refused the idea, and when I asked them why, they kept giving vague answers. But then they implied that I didn't have the ability to hold down a job or get a real job. And then let's just say I brought an elephant into the room, as they say. That's why things are a bit distant between the hiatus at home. My parents are hiding secrets, and their view of me is worse than it seemed, and I let it all out in a heavy way. But now that I think about it, they gave good reasons to doubt me, and I can think of several others, but a part of me wanted to hear some encouragement from them. I think I got too emotional at that moment. I'm still upset, but I really want to get all this tension out of the way. I stare at the pots and pans with my food already prepared. It's been a long time since I learned how to cook, and I've gotten much better. Although it would be better with someone else telling me if it was good or not. Anyway, I'll finish dinner soon. I need to do tomorrow's chores. Issei POVs off. Minutes later, the chestnut tree was racking his brains over a math problem, stuck on it for 15 minutes. He sighed wearily and put down the pencil he was holding. Issei, man, this is so complicated, he said, looking at the ceiling. Complicated, he thought with regret. The situation at home was complicated too. Doubts, distrust, secrets, and no answers. He wished he could know what was going on with his parents recently. He wasn't that. He knew something was wrong and his own parents were keeping him in the dark about something important. He felt it, realized it, but was still being kept silent about it all. Issei, I wish they could be more open with me. He told no one. Wait a minute, take the paper out of his pocket. He stared at the paper a little skeptically, but then it changed to hope. He didn't really believe in mysticism, but he liked it and wanted to hope that he would improve in the future. Issei, I wish I could solve all of this. Can someone help me? He looked at the paper with curiosity and hope. Unexpectedly, the black symbol on the paper glowed red. Quickly, the paper flew out of Issei's hands and turned into a bright red magic circle, illuminating the entire room. Issei, what the F? He shouted, covering his eyes. When he noticed that a person was walking out of the glowing circle, he fell to the ground as he recognized the person, or rather, the girl who appeared. Issei, Gremory-senpai? When the circle disappeared along with its glow, the girl smiled and two black wings sprouted from her back. Rias, good evening. You have requested the services of the Gremory clan's devils. I am here to. She stopped when she saw who had summoned her. Her future lover, Issei Hayato. In that case, she began her performance. Rias-a. Issei H. Rias H. Both H. Time lapse. Issei was having dozens of thoughts at the moment, and breathing heavily while the redhead seemed to be waiting for the boy to process all the information that came from the redhead in the last few minutes. This redhead was floating a few meters up, pretending to be sitting in the air. Issei, so a devil, right? Rias, that's right. And no, we don't take people's souls. That's become a practically obsolete and old method. We do more contracts these days. Issei, right, get up calmly. So that paper served as a portal? Rias, a summoning paper. We give it to humans and make contracts, but we can also give it to recruit people we see potential in. Issei, potential, remember the woman. Hey, that woman who gave me the pamphlet, she said the same thing about me. Rias, wow. So it really was you. My familiar told me about a student from my academy, and since you were the one who summoned me, My theory was right, she said in an excited manner, and her wings fluttered a little. Issei, okay, that was kind of cute. Wait, by that you mean you were watching me? Rias, well, I had to send some of my team members to check out your energy because you seem to emit a presence slightly different from that of a normal human. Fortunately, our investigation must have kept other beings away from you. Issei, other beings? And different how? And why would a demon be interested? He says, becoming more apprehensive. He didn't have much reason to doubt her, especially after she had flown with wings and summoned a small fireball with her hands recently. Besides, he didn't feel threatened by her, just confused and nervous at the moment, and a little scared since she confirmed that if she wanted to harm him, they wouldn't even be talking right now. She would have simply used hypnosis on him, or erased and changed his memory. Rias, I could explain it to you, but it's too time-consuming and complex. How about we meet at my club building tomorrow? Issei, in the Occult Research Club building? Why exactly? Think of an explanation. Wait, your club is your so-called team? Ria's smarter than she lets on, but yes, that's right. The team I'm talking about are the members of my club. But like I said, the explanation is quite long, and it's better to explain it all at once so as not to get into trouble. Issei nodded in agreement while sweating a little from nervousness. He was talking to a demon girl who appeared in his room a few minutes ago, as well as confirming that there were more beings like them and others different. This scared him a lot. And the worst part is that he had an energy, or some like that caught the attention of these beings. He found it strange that he wasn't freaking out at the moment. Oh no, he did freak out, but he let it all out at the beginning when he screamed. But now he was just scared and nervous. Rias clapped her hands twice to get the brown boy's attention. Rias, alright, before I go, I want to know if you'd like to make a contract? Issei, how does that work? Rias, simply put, you ask for a service and once I complete it you pay me. It can be with money or a favor, it all depends on the service I have to do. After all, you had a wish when you used the summoning pamphlet, and she was right, Hayate did indeed have a request, but it wasn't exactly what she expected. Issei, it's complicated. My parents have been hiding something from me and I feel like there's something really serious going on, and when they refused my help I kind of didn't react in the best way. That's why I wish someone could help me solve this whole problem. At that moment, Rias blinked in surprise and her wings were hidden. She placed her hand on her chin and was thoughtful for a few moments. Rias, Issei and his parents are fighting? But how? Why? This never happened in our timeline. Could it be that the past has changed because of the reboot of our world? And if so, what else has changed? In fact, what remains the same as the original world? She thought for a few seconds as Issei watched her a little less nervous now. To him, his demon senpai seemed a little worried after he said what he wanted. Rias, that might be tricky. You'd have to spy on your parents or look for documents that might be private. Issei, so it's not possible? Rias, oh, actually it is. We just have to use some hypnosis magic, memory-changing magic, and other basic things. I'm just saying that it's going to be complicated because it might take a while and we have to know who to use it on. Okay, that made him a little uncomfortable with how calm and peaceful she was. But he was the one who asked for help, so he should be able to handle it, and he said basic. Messing with people's minds is basic for them. That was a little scary. What would be next? A guy with the power to control gravity, someone who could rip out people's souls, or a legendary sword. Issei, alright, then can I leave all this investigation to you? Rias, sure, but remember, you must come to my club to talk about our possible relationship. I can't let someone with hidden potential or abilities run wild and get attacked. It would be horrible, and if my theory is correct, it would also be a huge waste. Again, potential being mentioned, but now with the part about if that same potential is lost it will be a waste. It warmed his heart a little with the backhanded compliments and the incredible possibility of becoming something more than he already is. Besides, he wouldn't be telling the truth if someone asked him if he didn't want to know about this so-called special talent of his. Was it some special magic? A distant bloodline? Did he inherit some powerful weapon that only he or a relative could use? Was he the reincarnation of someone? Okay, now the boy admitted that last one was a bit of a stretch. But he was talking to a demon girl, so anything could be possible at the moment in his eyes. Rias, very well, I will let you know if I get any information from my research. See you tomorrow, Isa-san. I will be waiting for you at the academy. She said goodbye politely. The redhead disappears in a bright red circle, leaving Issei paralyzed and somewhat confused by the way the girl called him. Issei? Geez, it's kind of weird to be called that after so long. And her voice was he starts to blush. It was kind of sweet, right? He had a rather silly smile as he thought about the way she called him, but he simply shook his head, getting rid of his thoughts. Issei, no, Issei. She's clearly doing her job and treating customers properly is standard. Don't let your hormones make you look like an idiot, he thought as he took a light breath. While the brown one was controlling himself mentally, the demon heiress was very thoughtful and worried about the way her lover's past was changing. Family problems, not going to spy on girls, and there were probably more things that she and the others didn't know. She had to improvise a bit because the request was very different from what she expected. She obviously thought it would be something like being a harem king, but it seemed like there were too many things going on in Hayate's life for him to focus on his desires. It was strange to her. Issei was an incredibly honest person about his thoughts, likes, and desires. Not seeing him mention them was kind of strange, but at least she got what she wanted. Now she just had to wait for tomorrow and resolve whatever was going on with her colleagues and sisters. And of course, hope that the future is not affected by a changed past. Issei was staring out the window of his classroom as he thought about his future encounter with Rias and her team of devils. Although now that he thought about it, it was maddening. The most popular girl in his school had turned out to be a demon, and apparently, there were several beings of the occult and supernatural that existed. His concept of normalcy had practically been thrown out the window, or perhaps it had been expanded. If she wanted to talk to him about some kind of hidden power or potential he had, then she probably wanted something from him? He doubted he could do anything a demon girl would need. Speaking of demons, he thought of her team that was made up of his club members. He first remembered his kohai, Kaneko Tuju, who had met him in the library. He remembered and knew from the mouths of others, something that basically the entire school knew, all members of the occult club. They were all basically celebrities in the academy. Rias Gremory herself, Akino Himejima, her right-hand woman, Kiba Yudo, the Prince of Ko, and the academy's mascot, the aforementioned Kaneko Tuju. In fact, wouldn't he have any problems if he suddenly got close to one of them? It's true that he had stopped speaking his mind and his desires for a while, in public at least, but people still called him a pervert. In reality, he was looking for places in the academy so he could have lunch in secret, afraid of Keitace and Murayama finding him and taking it out on him for not catching his other two perverted friends. Honestly, it almost felt like they were stalking him because it felt like they were trying to find reasons to beat him up for free. If they were already like this for no reason, he didn't want to see what it would be like if the prince was near him, for example. He could almost see the girls whining about how he was going to corrupt him or some like that. But maybe he was worrying for nothing. They were clearly professionals in this regard, most likely being quiet and acting calmly and quietly. Clearly acting in the shadows so as not to draw unwanted attention and not cause a commotion among the students. A knock on the door was heard along with fangirl screams from the girls in the room. Issei glanced at the door and grimaced in confusion as he saw a blonde boy from another class that he recognized approaching him. Kiba, hello, how are you? Issei, is this regarding the occult club? Kiba, yes, Rias Gremory-senpai sent me to pick you up. The brown one sighed as the girls screamed in horror as they realized what he was here for because of Hayate. They are screaming in disbelief about Yudo taking something from Hayate and not accepting this couple and arguing over his order. Issei, shut up. And stop imagining such stupid things, The brown-haired man quickly stood up as he pushed the friendly smiling blonde out of the room while telling the aforementioned to show the way quickly and walk quickly. Time break. Rias was in her room, sitting at her club table while maintaining a calm and serious expression. But that was just a facade. Her feet were tapping rapidly and nervously on the ground as she sweated a little. She was just hiding her nervousness very well. This conversation with Issei was much more important than the previous one because here they could try to convince him to join her nobility, but they needed to be convincing and trustworthy. She wouldn't let him be in a horrible situation for that, but this time she wanted to know Hayate's real choice. She wanted him to have that choice, unlike before when she simply watched him die impaled with a spear of light, a scene that repeated itself several times with the Longinus bearer. She took a breath to relax a little and remembered that she wasn't alone at the moment. She had her best friend and her adopted sister by her side. But a drop ran down her forehead as she saw Akino move her ponytail with her hands while her eyes trembled a little and she looked around trying to keep her gaze on something, and Kaneko ate several sweets compulsively until the bag she had was empty. She hoped that at least they would control themselves and not jump on top of issei without thinking. Rias, I hope I don't mess this up. And I hope they behave. Who am I kidding? I'm not breaking down because I've already done it before. A memory of her crying into her pillow and then squealing with happiness appeared. But it seemed like she was switching between reactions from moment to moment. But it was okay, she could convince issei to join her peerage, and if he didn't want to, they could put him under their protection with a contract. In other words, they didn't have to worry too much about their relationship because they could find a way. She expected at least. With a knock on the door, the three of them came out of their personal world and Kaneko cleaned up the candy mess and threw the empty candy bag behind the sofa she was sitting on. Kiba Bucho, I brought you here. Rias, come in, Kiba, she said calmly. The wooden door opened, revealing the blonde knight of the Gremory team, and right behind him Hayadu. The girls' hearts jumped hard, and with her peripheral vision, Rias noticed the silly smile growing on Akino, but she seemed to control herself enough. She saw issei looking around the room and at her other pieces quickly before focusing his gaze on her. She gave a small smile and tried to keep a soft expression. Rias, hello issei Hayadu-kun, good to see you decided to meet with us. The brown-haired man swallowed hard as he tried to appear calm, despite showing slight signs of nervousness. Issei, don't worry, I'm a very committed person, despite appearances. Rias, I see. So what do you want us to explain first? I'd rather make you comfortable so that this conversation can go smoothly. Issei, wow, she looks like a business owner interviewing a new employee. She probably has a lot of experience in this, he thought as he sat on one of the sofas in the living room. The brown-haired man was a little thoughtful about what was important at this moment, until he realized that he didn't even have the basics that generated the new world he was being introduced to. Issei, I think an explanation of the basics of everything. That should be what I want most right now. The deal she proposed can come later. Rias, great choice. I also think it's best to start with this for a newbie. She smiled slightly and her face became a little more serious. First of all, I must say that all existing religions and myths are part of our world. Werewolves, vampires, monsters, dragons, demons, angels, and gods. Like the Greeks and Egyptians, for example, all of them have their own territory in this world. At this moment, a chill ran down the young man's spine. He was a little startled by her tone of voice at the end, sounding a little threatening. The redhead waited for the brown-haired man to absorb the information first before continuing. Although he looked a little lost and dazed, he signaled for her to continue. Rias, as I said before, my club and I are demons, she said, opening and closing her wings. More specifically, demons from Christian mythology. Issei, wait, Christian? That's allowed? I mean, shouldn't Japan be the territory of Amaterasu, Tsukuyomi, Susanoo and such? Rias, that's right, but we have reached a non-aggression pact by making only Ka City our territory. As the city's guardians, we must ensure that the beings here do not have to be slaughtered by stray devils or hostile supernatural beings. That's why we're having this conversation now, to ensure that your unawakened abilities do not cause an untimely death. The boy scratched his neck a little when the possibility of him dying came up. Especially when she talked about a special ability. Issei, senpai, could you explain to me right away what kind of ability that would be? Because I'm pretty sure I'm normal. Rias, obviously, you wouldn't know about this, Issei. But what I'm referring to is a sacred gear. A powerful tool created by the biblical god that only humans can wield. Issei repeated the name in a confused whisper, mainly wondering why he would have one of these sacred gear, and how he got one. Issei, wait, biblical god? Like that god? The one from Christianity? After he asked, everyone held their heads in pain. The brown one looked at them confused by this. Rias, don't do that again. Even just using that word to refer to him causes harm to us. Issei, wait, are you serious? Just mentioning him causes you pain? Akino, a rule that seems kind of stupid. That's what it is, she muttered softly. Rias, yes, this was something created by the biblical God's system. The redhead waited for the pain in her head to pass before she could continue her explanation. It wasn't a rookie mistake that would interrupt her. Rias, anyway, to fully understand part of my motivations, I need to explain what happened a few centuries ago. The great war between the three biblical factions. The angels, the fallen angels, and us demons. The first with their sacred power and spears of light and who have the grace of their leader and father. The second being those who fell into sin after the birth of the demons. And us demons, those angels who followed the morning star and those who were born from Lilith. Issei was a little scared at the mention of the father of lies, but he tried to keep quiet in a subtle way. Rias, but in the middle of it, 2 of the 10 most powerful beings in the world were caught between the 3 factions, the celestial dragons. Thanks to that, the 3 opposing sides united to survive. In this way, the 3 sides survived and the 2 beings were sealed by the leader of heaven, but all sides suffered considerable losses, especially our side. Which brings us to the heart of the matter. Issei, my possible sacred gear. Rias, exactly. They're not just artifacts created by the biblical God. They adapt and evolve depending on the user, which is why even if 2 people have the same type of gear, the power they exert will depend on several aspects that are mostly centered on the user. Yudo, could you give a brief example? The blonde nodded in agreement, and a sword appeared in the blonde's hand. Issei quickly had an expression of surprise and admiration. Kiba, this is my sacred gear, Sword Birth. It gives me the ability to create countless demonic swords, each with their own attributes and properties at my disposal. Despite being one of the regular ones, it is perfect for me as a knight. Issei, oh show! We have a real-life Shiro Amiya here, Kiba, but despite that, there are different rules depending on the sacred gear or the user. If you have one too, Isiken, I can't say what its ability will be, but its growth can only be measured by your willpower, desires, and emotions for the most part. Issei, right. But wait, how do you activate one? Because doesn't that kind of thing require trauma or some kind of ritual? Rias, don't worry, that would only be necessary if you didn't know about it. For some reason, if the individual knows about it, and that they have a sacred gear, it becomes easier to awaken it. But it also depends on the level of the sacred gear. Issei nodded as he understood what the girl said. It was probably some kind of safety measure so that such an artifact would not appear due to any strong emotion. It would probably be very troublesome if random people started to display random magical powers. So God probably made these artifacts awaken with the help of other people or with trauma and strong emotions in times of need. Rias, despite that, I would like to return to yesterday's topic before delving into your gear. I want to talk about our possible relationship, both for your safety and ours, since this could be one of the means to pay for our service. The redhead raised her hand and a magic circle appeared in her palm. From the circle, a box with the symbol of her clan, and inside it, there were some crimson-red chess pieces. Issei was a little mesmerized by those pieces. They were beautiful and looked important, probably some magical tool if his experience with manga and games is correct. Rias, because our forces have been greatly reduced, Mawajuka Beelzebub created the evil pieces system to increase our population more quickly and easily, reincarnating other beings into devils, mainly to create a group of devils with great power that we call nobility or peerage, where the high-class devils are the kings and leaders of the group, and the reincarnated devils are the servants. The brown one found the first name of the one that came before Beelzebub strange. It made it seem like a surname. He had a little idea of the relatively famous meanings in some mythologies, so he remembered that this one was known as Lord of Gluttony. Issei, reincarnated, you guys basically turn humans into devils using chess pieces? For something like that, I thought it was a blood pact, or selling one's soul. Akino, mostly yes, but they don't necessarily have to be humans. Some high-class devils can get beings from other races, such as yokai and dragons, into their ranks. But the only beings that can't be transformed into devils are divine beings. Issei, so there are limitations. Even though it has such an amazing function. But if she brought up that topic, then you're showing me this. Rias, to bring you into my nobility. It's also to show that I'm willing to give you a chance, but also to help you develop your abilities. Of course, I also have my own interests, I won't lie about that, but I can assure you that this has no malicious intentions. Issei, to see, even so, this is a big deal. Even though this is an amazing proposal, I don't know anything about what will happen to me and if I will change at all. Even so, why now? And why me exactly? He said, his hand shaking slightly. Kaneko, he looks a little scared. I think the changes have made him quite cautious. Akino Ria seems to want to convince issei by creating a bridge of trust between us, rather than using his wishes. Rias, I need more servants to solve a problem that concerns my clan, and any addition is welcome. Besides, having a sacred gear user is incredibly advantageous. That's why the 3 biblical factions seek them out to have them in their forces. Especially the fallen angels, whose leader has a fascination for them. As I said, having a sacred gear user is very advantageous. But it also means that they are very hunted so that their gears can be taken by force. Issei, is there a way to get these artifacts away from humans? And how bad is that? Akino's sacred gears are linked to the souls of their users, Isekan. Having a sacred gear removed is the same as having a huge piece of your own being ripped out, which inevitably leads to death, which is why sacred gear users are recruited or attacked before awakening their artifacts. As far as we know, only the fallen angels have a method for this. Angels practically abhor this type of practice, and we devils do not use anything similar. A much colder shiver ran down his spine at the image of himself having something removed from his incredibly mutilated body, and all those videos and times he played Mortal Kombat didn't help his imagination. Despite this, the little joke didn't help ease his mind. Sacred gear being ripped out of one's body caused death. He was weak, easy to capture, easy to take down, easy to defeat, easy to have his power stolen and then inevitably killed and his body probably discarded. Honestly, he felt like there was a rope around his throat with all the scenarios going through his mind. Becoming a demon and being at the mercy of the orders of beings superior to him in strength and intelligence, being captured by another being as powerful or more than the ones in front of him and killed, or being killed by some man who wanted to study something that was inside him. However, the demon girl, the person in front of him, Rias Gremory, was reaching out to him with a sort of deal so that they could both benefit. In truth, other than the fact that he had to obey her, Issei hadn't noticed any major disadvantages, especially since he could leave her group if he rose in the hierarchy. But even so, I don't want to be stuck in a hospital bed and be dissected, he thought, shivering slightly. The boy looked at the redhead in front of him, who was slightly moving her fingers as she waited for his answer. Issei, despite being a devil, she seems a bit anxious about my silence. Maybe she really isn't a big enough trouble to turn to someone with a bad reputation, but a good chance of being useful? Issei was thinking a lot in a short amount of time, much more than usual. He wasn't very smart, his grades were just enough to pass the year, and he had a very high grade here and there. However, he wasn't a complete idiot, being able to notice certain details. At the moment, he was carefully analyzing their conversation. And one thing that wasn't fully said was the pros and cons of joining them. Also, she probably wants to know about his artifact, probably out of interest in the advantages of it. Issei, even if I accept, what will happen to me? You didn't say much about the pros and cons of me accepting this deal, Ria-senpai. It's not that I want to seem skeptical or arrogant or anything like that, but I can't make a decision like that easily. Needless to say, everyone was surprised at how careful Hayato was being. He seemed more intelligent while talking to their leader, but he was probably afraid of causing a negative reaction to their king. Another important thought was what Kiba was thinking about this meeting. He didn't know much about Hayato other than his negative reputation and a possible break in the friendship between his two friends with similar exaggerated desires. The blonde wasn't very fond of gossip, but some other boys said that the leader of the perverted trio had created a kind of feud or grudge against the other two members for being used as a scapegoat in escapes and barely observing anything in the holes in the kendo club's locker room. Young Hayato was also showing some different things like the weather. Staying in the library was already something strange for him to be doing. Kiba, you feel quite pressured, don't you, Hayato-kun? I imagine that Bucho would be easily convincing you due to her desire to form a harem, and you would accept without any objection. But it seems that both you and my master have more hidden layers. He thought with a smile as he saw his leader answer the brown-haired man. Rias, well, let's see. Enhanced physical attributes without many of the human limitations, increased life expectancy to around 10,000 years, the ability to use demonic magic, fly with wings, and depending on the piece you use to reincarnate, you can obtain a special ability specific to the piece and protection from my clan, the Gremory. As for the disadvantages, they are weak to attacks of light or with the holy element, such as holy water and the like. Issei, wow, that is even more than I expected. But if I accept, I will become your servant, right? Rias, precisely. But you don't need to worry about much because my clan members treat their servants well. But if you obtain enough strength and achievements, you can rise up the demonic hierarchy and become a high-class devil, and you might even have your own peerage. Issei was incredibly surprised by the possibility. It seemed like something very tempting: living longer, magical powers, and knowing how to use a possible magical weapon he could have. But something inside him kept him conflicted. Could he give up his humanity so easily? How would his parents react if they found out? Even though he wanted to find out what was happening and hidden in the shadows of his home, he questioned whether it was worth it. Rias, so, Isikin, do you have an answer? Issei too don't know what to choose. Everyone looked at him. It all seemed really good at first glance, and I could even accept it so I could see if my parents were getting into any trouble. Booty, don't know if I can change my entire life in an irreversible way like that. Even though I have a lot of amazing opportunities, I don't know if I have the courage to do it. Rias had to hold back a disappointed sigh, but this had to be Issei's decision and not hers. She wanted to keep and know his choices were his, something he had no say in and simply had to accept. Or rather, she was using her personality and desires to be able to accept it more easily. Whether he wants to or not, whether he joins or not, should be his choice. She wants to know and respect his choices, because she knows that one way or another, she could have his trust. She would just need to try harder. Rias, in that case, how about we wait a little while? If you want some time, you can give us a definitive answer in a few days. I'm not in a rush to resolve my personal matters at the moment, and if you don't accept, we can maintain an employment contract. Issei, right, I really do need time. He stood up after the redhead confirmed his request and signaled to his servants to let him go. The boy left with his head full of important thoughts. Shortly after he left, the redhead sighed and told the rest of the club to return to their own rooms and wait until the next day, where they met with Hayato again. She also warned them not to persuade him or try to convince him with actions, empty promises. They would only try a simple and non-offensive approach, and only if he came to them himself. Rias, I hope that this time, I took the right path. This time I should leave this choice in Issei's hands. And accept it. Luckily for her, Hayato would come back with an appropriate response. But not because of his perverted side or desire for power, but because of a moment of need. A need caused indirectly by his weakness. Issei seemed more tired even though he had slept much earlier and with a complicated expression on his face. Maybe it was also because he didn't have dinner properly yesterday. The conversation he had with Rias and her occult club repeated itself while he thought about the answer he would give, still being his biggest doubt. He wouldn't lie that he was curious and even interested in accepting, not only for himself, but also because his parents seemed more apprehensive than before. They were both taking longer to get home because they were working even more. This was causing them both to become more stressed, with dark circles under their eyes, and they were starting to not eat properly. They were going out more often and were barely seeing their son during the day. That's why the boy thought he should accept Rias's proposal and solve whatever problem his parents were hiding. But if he turned into a devil, wouldn't that be abandoning his humanity and his identity as a person? But at the same time, he had to remember that they approached him calmly and peacefully, but there were others who would not think of killing him without batting an eyelid. He rubbed his neck at the thought. He had a slight familiarity with this kind of event ever since his grandfather was found sleeping lifeless in a chair. He never forgot his funeral and his grandmother's tears. Even more so the cold and sad atmosphere of that moment, his father's dejected face and the sadness of those who attended his grandfather's farewell. But mainly the emptiness that his absence caused. It was very difficult for everyone in her house and her grandmother, especially her, who could not stay calm in her own house. But the way of death that her red-haired senpai's group referred to was an abrupt, forced, and unnatural way. Unlike Juzo Hayato, who passed away calmly and with age, his life could be taken and ripped away from him by the hands of another ill-intentioned person. The conclusion issei came to was that people with great untapped potential were erased if they weren't. He thought of many families who had experienced the emptiness of having a family member who had been killed because of a sacred gear. He didn't want his parents to have to go through that again. And to do that, he would need to have power, and perhaps, by joining Ria's group, he could grow stronger faster and maybe even get some extra money. With a quick glance ahead, he realized that he had already passed the academy gate, and once again realized that he had been on automatic since he woke up. Some idiotic girls looked at him saying that he was probably trying to corrupt the prince of the academy, while other guys were rooting for Yuto to be as bad as issei and the other two of the trio. Issei, seriously, F you all. Honestly, he already thought it was annoying that they still treated him as if he still did the same stupid things as before. But now they also say he's a bad influence on others, which he perhaps could be, but not intentionally. But that didn't matter much, considering he was used to it even if he had somewhat better behavior than when he first joined the academy. Issei, and now that I think about it, what kind of problem does Grimora-senpai have coming to get more members for her group? He thought it was something big. She was trying to hide her nervousness, but he noticed, even if it was just a little bit, and worried about whatever he had gotten himself into. He didn't know what was happening for her to recruit him now, and he didn't even have any experience fighting, at least not real fighting. But he had fought a lot when his neighbor Shidas still lived in Ko. But that was another story, another situation altogether. He was basically getting himself into a world that was incredibly abnormal for him. But he had potential, his sacred gear. But he didn't awaken it, nor did he ask how to properly awaken his. He should at least know if he had one, but perhaps he would have to join them, although he was still worried about what would change in him. Issei, but does it really matter if I can protect myself and my family? Even though he was worried about any changes in him, Hayato still wanted to have strength to protect himself and his family from any danger that might appear. He was practically sitting a few rooms away from some powerful demons who had their eyes on him and were looking into his possible capabilities. But unlike them, there were those who wouldn't be so kind. Could they at least help awaken his gear to evaluate him? Hearing his name being called, he noticed Motohama and Matsuda calling him for something. He entered in automatic mode again, and wished he hadn't left to avoid dealing with those two. Break of time and space. A tall, muscular man with black hair stood in his office inside his mansion, waiting for an important visitor. He wore sunglasses, a black shirt with matching pants, a light gray tie around his neck, and 3 beaded earlobe piercings on his left ear. Additionally, he wore a dark brown jacket, the collar lined with thick white fur, and white lace-up sneakers with beige soles, with no socks on his feet. He compulsively tapped his fingers on his desk as he waited for the said person to show up. The man had finally finished his chores and could enjoy some special services from his best employees, but his supplier would call him today. And the worst part was that he couldn't refuse a request from that guy. He was literally a monster, both in personality and physical form. He was sure he was only alive for convenience. He had several men following him, a large amount of weapons in his possession, and several side businesses in the criminal underworld. He made a name for himself, Kokujin, but it was all due to his supplier. He owed practically all of the power he gained to him, and I could easily take all of that away. Kokujin, when will he arrive? He says he wants to meet me, but he doesn't even set a time, simply because I don't need it. A red and black mark appeared on the human's left hand as a magic circle appeared in the middle of the room. He broke out in a cold sweat as a light emitted from the circle and formed a hologram of a humanoid shadow. Shadow Kokujin, I hope you haven't forgotten your position and your work. Kokujin, no, I know what you are. The mark glows and veins appear all around the arm. His arm moved erratically and stopped as it made a claw near his neck. He was sweating and gritting his teeth as he held back the urge to scream in pain. But it would be worse if he gave in to it. His situation would be much worse. Shadow, focus on what's important, Kokujin. Get me more souls, both from victims and followers. I need more so I don't have to use yours. Kokujin, understood. I'll do that right away. Shadow, good. Then start with those who are taking too long to pay back their loans to buy medicine. In fact, take their son first. I like the taste of fresh young meat. Then bring him back to me alive. Kokujin, sure, an idiot teenager will be easy to get. Shadow, good, but I want it whole so I can break it myself. The man agreed, and his arm returned to normal and stopped hurting along with the mark that disappeared. He was able to smooth his own arm to see if it still worked. The shadow was led into the magic circle, and before disappearing it gave a last warning. Shadow, remember that you were the one who wanted to make a contract with a Kokujin demon. Try to respect the conditions. He says, disappearing. The gangster felt a little relieved with his supplier gone. It had been a few years, but he remembered well how they formed a contract. How he had sold his own soul to gain power and rise in the criminal underworld. His only regret was that he had become a demon's lapdog. He didn't care if a brat was going to die, but there was no way he was going to contradict that monster. Taking out his phone, he dialed a number and one of his subordinates answered, at the same time taking out a document with the name of the son of the idiot couple he was extorting. Kokujin, listen, idiot, come here and gather 2 other men. You're going to catch those 2 hired brats for not paying the bill. Another group will be in charge of catching the idiots. Break of time and space. Issei thought he had been quiet all day, but the 2 main members of the Kendo Club wanted to vent the rest of the anger at their 2 idiotic colleagues. That's why he was hiding wherever he could in the gym. But those 2 were determined to hit him in the face even though he hadn't done anything. That's why he was running at high speed and trying to elude the 2 of them through the trees or the academy buildings. He was getting tired, he hadn't eaten enough, and he was getting angry not only at Murayama and Keitase, but also at Matsuda and Motohana, who were throwing him into their traps just so they wouldn't suffer alone. Honestly, he was a few steps away from throwing away the little consideration he had for the 2 of them and slapping them in the face. He had that capacity, he just hadn't done anything of the sort because of that minimal consideration. He kept running as he was passing the courts used by the tennis club. He almost kept going, but a hand pulled him into the locker rooms where a soft hand held him still as the 2 girls walked right past and lost him. The hand released his mouth and he relaxed a little, but was surprised to hear his senpai's voice. Akino era, who would have thought these 2 would be so mischievous? Issei Himejima senpai? Wah! He gets a flick on the forehead. Akino Isiken, I just saved your bum from an undeserved beating. I at least deserve to be called by my name. Issei? Sorry and thank you, Akeno-senpai. He said, a little confused. Akino, that's a step forward. So, let's talk a bit, or would you rather be caught by them? The brown-haired man laughed nervously as he followed his senpai and decided to ask her for help. Minutes later, the 2 moved away a little and took advantage of the empty space to be able to talk without worrying about being overheard. According to Akino, she didn't want to seem invasive by erasing some students' memories for convenience. Ignoring this, Issei decided to explain his side of the story and how outraged he was for his 2 friends. Akino assured him that she believed in his innocence and suggested that the brown-haired man take the initiative himself. Now calmer and more determined, he asked about what had been bothering him since yesterday. His sacred gear. Akino, oh, that's right, we didn't explain how to awaken your sacred gear. But then again, you didn't ask yourself. Issei, yeah, I thought you guys would only tell me how to use it if I joined you. The black-haired girl simply chuckled and replied that she understood his point. Akino, well, Ryuspucho said not to pressure you into choosing, but if you wanted help, we could do something as a token of trust. If you want to awaken a sacred gear, you must focus and visualize an image of something that represents power. The greatest representation of power. Issei, simple. Ben 10 in the form of Alien X resetting the universe. Akino, have you watched this series? Issei, only an uncultured person would say no. I'm known for being a pervert who's very open about my desires and I admit it, but almost no one here knows me completely. He put his hand on his chin. So, I need to concentrate and visualize an image representing power? I'll try. He closed his eyes and concentrated, focusing on a black being with white dots and green eyes that looked like the universe and feeling a slight strangeness in his left hand. He raised his left fist in guard and prepared to throw a punch, while in his mind the image of Alien X released purple rays and galaxies appeared around him. Issei, haha! He punched forward. The next instant, his arm caught fire and a red gauntlet with yellow details and a green jewel appeared when the flames ceased. The 2 looked in wonder at the gauntlet that appeared to Hayato. Akino, of course. Even though it's a new reality, Issei still walks that path. She thought nostalgically. Issei, wow, is that my sacred gear? Akino exactly. It seems to be a twice critical. It has the ability to double the user's power for a few minutes. It is yours, along with her power. You can summon and hide it whenever you want. Issei haha. Wow. Wow, it's so strange, yet familiar at the same time. It's almost like I've always had this with me, Akino, and you're right about that. It's said that sacred gears are given at birth, and that they evolve and grow stronger with their wielder. Issei seemed surprised by the information. He looked at the gauntlet again and tried to hide it, but it glowed red before disappearing. His eyes sparkled with excitement, and he made it appear again, then made it disappear and repeated the process a few times. Issei smiled as he saw her hand with the gauntlet, and squeezed his fingers. He seemed to be thinking far away, and Akino felt him drifting away. Akino Isiken? Issei smiles. Akena-san, thank you for this. I've always been very bad at many things, and the ones I'm good at can only fit on the fingers of one hand. But with this I feel like I can be much more, help more. The hybrid looked at the brown-haired man who had a distant look. He seemed happy as he looked at his gear, but he seemed strange somehow. But that thought fell apart when he saw the determined look. Issei, I'm not going to lie, I'm still pretty undecided about whether to accept or not. But regardless of my choice, I know I'll help them in any way I can. The girl immediately widened her eyes as she saw in front of her not only the current issei, but a glimpse of the issei she loved, the issei she lost, and her mind wanted to take her to the first moment that consolidated her passion for him, but she managed, miraculously, to control herself and not let herself get carried away at that moment. Akino, it's not time yet. Remember that he doesn't know anything about you yet. Even if jumping on his neck is what you want most. She thinks, scratching her arm. She sighed as she smiled. This may be a version that hasn't yet experienced the same battles, but it was essentially the same issei. Akino, that's great to hear, but Isiken, I have to remind you that this is something we were going to do regardless of your choice. Bucho wants your choice to come entirely from you. She'd rather you accept it by your own choice. Issei, I see. But wow, who would have thought that devils also had ethics? He says, making his gauntlet disappear. Akino, it's not something to blame him for. Things have changed a lot since the War of the Three Factions and some events in Hell. Issei nodded in agreement without asking what these events were. It was probably something he wouldn't understand without a long explanation. The brown-haired man thanked the black-haired girl once more and said goodbye to her. He decided to go first so as not to cause any trouble if they went together, which wouldn't be a problem for her, but Hayadu ran off without letting her speak. Akino just stared at his back helplessly. She felt again the gigantic distance that seemed to be between them due to the universe having been remade. Akino, this weight is going to kill me. That also applies to you, right, Kaneko? The cat girl appears from behind a tree and walks up to the older woman with her stoic gaze. She crossed her arms as she looked away. Kaneko, at least we're letting him choose. Rias is the same way, but she's focusing on plans for our strengthening so she doesn't have to think about it all the time. Akino, I know, smiles, but I can't help but feel nostalgic for Issei acting like this. Even though he doesn't show his perverted side as much, that kindness and flaming determination still exist in him. While Himejima was a little lost in her own little world, the golden-eyed albino was a little envious. She would have to be more persistent to get some space. Time lapse. The students were already leaving and heading home while some went somewhere else together. Issei didn't pay attention to his classmates as usual and simply continued on his way home. After months, he felt a lightness and carefreeness that he hadn't felt in a long time. Ever since his parents had been acting strangely, he didn't think he could relax like this. But ever since he made his sacred gear appear, he was feeling as free as a bird. He wanted to keep using his magical equipment and find out what he could do with it. From what he understood, it was a simple effect, increasing his own power by 2 times. However, as a good otaku and especially a Dragon Ball fan, he understood very well the danger of someone having twice as much power. To him, it was something harmless at the moment, but if someone who could destroy a city with all his power had that ability, he could do the same feat more easily. Such a thought frightened him, but at least people who were part of the supernatural world would consider it a weak ability. So he probably had less chance of being attacked or being watched, at least. This might give him time to develop some fighting skills. But he would still need to protect his parents, even if he couldn't protect himself. Because of this, and with several other thoughts, he was almost decided on his choice. Issei, maybe I should accept. They have experience, resources, and I don't even have the money to pay for the investigation that Rias Group is doing. And besides, I barely have any idea what to do first. He paused for a second. No, my parents, first I have to solve the problem that my parents are hiding. Start with us to find out, kid. He heard a voice before he was grabbed by the neck and thrown into an alley. He grabbed the area he was holding and looked at his attackers. By the clothes on the three of them and the weapons in the fists of two of them, a crowbar and a baseball bat, he noticed a van appear and stop where the alley entrance was. Before he could get up, Issei received a kick and ended up being thrown a few meters away from where he was. Even in pain, Issei realized that this was not the strength of a normal human. Thug 2, hey, watch out, idiot. The boss wants you alive. If you kill him by accident, he'll hand us over to that monster. Thug 3, oh, F you. I want to have fun with my power sometime, you. Issei trying to get up. What the hell is this? This strength is not human. And what do they want with me? Bandit 1, come on, you idiots. We have to catch this one while the others go after this brat's old men. The young man is confused about what he is saying, but freezes when he understands what he was implying with his complaints. Issei, calm down, is he talking about my parents? Is this the level of what they're hiding from me? Issei struggled to stand up as he tried to think about his situation. 3 armed men in front of him, in a kind of power and monster-like manner. Considering the strength of the one who kicked him, they all had that level of strength, and if they had superhuman strength, it was very likely that they had a connection with some supernatural being. So it was okay for him to use his gauntlet. One of them approached him and grabbed him by the collar of his shirt. Feigning weakness, he watched the man bring his face closer to yell at him. The moment was perfect, he had to be quick. Thug 2, hey. You stupid brat. Come with Issei's sacred gear. He punches him in the face with his gauntlet. The man steps back a few meters from Issei and holds his jaw, picking up a tooth that had fallen out. Thug 3, what the F? Thug 1, hey, he's just like the boss. Thug 3, no, idiot. The one who summons a weapon is that crazy guy whose boss gets the stuff. The member who was hit by Issei looked at the boy in surprise and a little apprehension. Issei, very well now, what do my parents have to do with this? The jewel of his sacred gears shined as he felt an unnatural strength in his body. His anger was activating his ability and fueling the strength of his equipment, and since his parents were involved, he was practically dead. The 3 men glared at the brown boy angrily while the one who was hit was still feeling pain in his jaw. The blow was clumsy, but very strong, almost frighteningly so, while Issei had his guard up as he stared at the 3 with care and concern. He even fought before, but the situation is very different now, having 3 gang members, mafia or some like that. He shifted his gaze between the 3 of them and wondered what he could do in this situation, and alone at that. He didn't ask for help with his phone. It would be obvious if he reached into his pocket and pulled out the phone. Thug 3, screw this. I'm going to end this idiot. He charged at me with the baseball bat. Issei gritted his teeth as he saw the bandit approaching quickly. He raised his fists and awkwardly dodged a blow from the man and tried to punch again with his armband. The bandit raised his baton and the weapon ended up breaking under the teenager's blow. The other 2 didn't stay still for long and started attacking the young man. Issei couldn't dodge all the blows and could only defend himself from a few. He was punched in the face and ended up hitting the wall, but he managed to dodge an attack from the thief with a crowbar. He tried to punch him, but the man ended up dodging it and hitting the brown boy in the stomach. That last blow made Issei stagger a bit and lose his attention. He raised his bracer, which was glowing again, to grab the crowbar and pulled it, taking it away from the bandit and giving it a right hook. Issei. Even if my sacred gear increases my strength, I can't fight 3 people at once properly. Thug 1, what the hell? Can we just stand still? Issei, like I'm that. Besides, what the hell do you guys want with me? What about my parents, huh? Thug 2, oh, F you. As soon as we take you to the boss, I'm going to break your arms. Thug 3, I'm going to love pulling your teeth out with my pliers, folks. Meow. The 3 bandits look up and a white cat falls on Bandit 2's face and starts tearing his face apart, while the others try to get the animal off their partner. The brown one is confused by this and finds it strange, and is discouraged that a small kitten is dealing well with the men who were threatening him. But determined to take advantage of the situation, he ran towards the one who had managed to catch the cat with his hands. Making his sacred gear shine once more, he managed to hit him with a punch in the stomach, bringing him to his knees. "Issei, don't forget about me," he shouts, making the man fall backwards. The cat jumps on the face of another of the bandits, and when they try to take it away, it starts biting the other's hand. Thug 1. "What the hell kind of cat is that?" A voice above them was heard. A voice of a girl that Issei recognized well and smiled upon seeing her. "Kaneko Shiro, stop playing with that trash," he says, descending with his wings. Unfortunately for the bandits, she wasn't in a good mood or caring about discretion. So she came down at full speed and landed a powerful kick on one of them in the head, and then punched the one next to him in the stomach. The only one left was the one Issei had struck and brought to his knees, but now he was standing still in fear. "Issei Kaneko, wow, it's really good to see you, Kaneko, and it's surprising that you're already fighting so soon after awakening your sacred gear practically a few hours ago. You need to be more careful, Issei-senpai." "Issei, sorry, but those guys caught me by surprise." "Kaneko, well, Akeno-senpai didn't explain everything properly either." She looked at him. "With the sacred gear awakened, you emit a higher level of energy, and you don't know how to control it properly. So supernatural beings can easily notice that you have sacred gear. I think they could be a good example of that." Issei nods after swallowing hard. The golden-eyed albino approaches the man on the ground and he tries to move back and run away. However, the girl grabs the man's neck and keeps him down. "Kaneko, now, let's talk to my master." A few moments later, within minutes, the three men were bound with chains and unconscious with empty eyes. Rias and Akino had just used hypnosis magic on them to reveal everything they knew, which wasn't much, but it was still worrying and surprising. Issei's reaction spoke for itself. "Issei debts with mobsters? What the hell were they thinking? That's why my mom got a job. Why didn't they say anything?" "For what reason, Rias Isci?" She interrupts him. "You can ask them directly after we take care of those men." Issei, what? "Akino Isiken, the leader of these men, is probably receiving support from a stray devil, so these bandits are emitting demonic power. Basically a reincarnated devil who abandoned his master." "Rias, exactly. And since they're doing this on our territory, we have to deal with them. Especially after messing with one of our contractors." "Issei-senpai, that's right, I'm a contractor." "Just a contractor, Rias, but first I have to notify the other nobility who is in charge of the city. After that I need to make a call and then we will go meet the boss of this Yuzuka." "Issei, calm down, another nobility? There are more devils in the school." "Kiba, don't worry, Isiken, Rias Butcher will pass on the information to you later." The brown-haired man simply nodded as he watched the group with a thoughtful face. They were actually planning to face the mobsters like it was a normal Monday, and were so calm about it, which made the young man even more surprised. "Issei, I was really lucky that the first supernatural beings I met were them, wasn't it?" I smiled slightly. "I really need to join them." Break of time and space. Gora and Mickey were in despair. The man they owed had finally had enough and decided that they should pay him back quickly, but not with money or material goods. The worst part is the way they found out, the way they ambushed them. Gora and Mickey were caught on their way back from their jobs. The patriarch even tried to resist and call for help, but ended up being hit in the stomach and knocked out. Mickey was caught as she was leaving the restaurant where she worked and was quickly arrested. The two were tied up and gagged as they were taken to their base. The matriarch began to cry softly as her husband crawled closer to her. The mobsters who had kidnapped them didn't care much since they had already searched the couple, but they still wanted to instill a little fear. "Bandit 1, now that we've caught the old guys, let's go after the brat." "Thug 2, no idiot, others have already done that." The couple was startled by their conversation, and both began to worry more because the life of their only son was at stake. Soon they arrived at their base and stopped in the garage, and began to take both of them out of the vehicle and drag them to a private room where they left them both on their knees on the floor. In front of them was the leader of this Yakuza. The man was clearly impatient, and was holding a phone that seemed to be on an unanswered call. The man lost his patience and crushed the phone in his hands and threw it away. Kokujin, how the F is that possible? He's just a fing teenager. How could they lose him? He put his hands on his face and groaned in frustration, while his henchmen were a little scared and kept behind the Hayadu couple, who were also scared. Although Goro was a little less worried since Issei wasn't in danger, his wife was holding back her tears so as not to draw their attention. He wished he could hold her hand and tell her everything would be okay, but he knew that would probably be a lie. And the worst part was, they had no one to blame but themselves. Months ago, Riko Hayadu, Gora's mother and Miki's mother-in-law, was diagnosed with an illness that required treatment and a specific medicine that they could not afford even if they worked for more than a year. To make matters worse, she needed to start treatment soon and they did not have the credit to take out a loan from the bank, so the two agreed to ask them for money. They both agreed to it, even though they knew it could go wrong, but it was a critical moment and they were desperate, and they did so much to keep this a secret from Issei. They didn't want their son to be linked to anything that could mess up his life. They might have been hypocrites, but they preferred to take all the risks upon themselves as long as their only child was not affected by their actions. Kokujin, you two have one lucky son. He looked at the couple. Now, in addition to incompetent employees, I have a supplier who's dead off at me. He went over to Goro and punched him in the face to relieve his stress. Miki let out a muffled scream and looked at her husband on the ground. Kokujin, you better cry and scream while you can, because since your brat isn't here, you'll have to serve for now. He looked at his wrist and a mark on the back of his hand appeared for him to call his investor. The mark glowed and a magic circle seemed to form, only for the light to fade and nothing to appear. The Hayada couple were in disbelief when they saw something considered magical, but again they were scared when he tried again and continued to fail at what he was doing. Kokujin, what the F? What the F is going on? Before he could think of anything else, one of his henchmen's phones rang and he quickly picked it up. Taking it out of his pocket, he saw that it was one of their guards who must have been on patrol at the moment. When he answered, he asked what it was and the voice told him to deliver it to his boss. He told Kokujin that it was for him and angrily took it. Kokujin, who the F is that? Security guard telephone chief. They said that no one can call or receive calls. Kokujin, what the hell does that mean? Ria's phone. It means you can't call for help from the devil you made a contract with. Kokujin, who? How did you? Ria's phone. That doesn't matter. I can only say that since you made a contract with a stray devil and are making the family of a contractor of mine, I must eliminate you. Kokujin, what are you? Ria's phone anyway. I'll see you in a few seconds. Bye. Hang up on him. An explosion is heard and everyone is startled. The Yakuza leader simply gets angrier and decides to take matters into his own hands. He orders the three of them to take the couple to the third underground warehouse and then look for those who broke into his residence. The mark glowed again and all of his henchmen present emitted a red aura, along with a glow in their eyes of the same color. He was not going to be caught by some idiots who thought they could invade his house however they wanted. With Rias and others, the Gremri nobility was incredible in Issei's eyes. Rias and Aquino created a barrier together that prevented communication through magic circles, as long as it had a lower power than theirs together. The guards who were patrolling the mansion, some were easily defeated by Kaneko, and one who tried to attack them from behind, but was knocked down by Issei with a blow from his armband, who was also participating in the invasion of the place. The redhead didn't want to take the teenager along, but Issei said he could help in a fight as payment for the services he requested from her team. Unfortunately, Aquino and Kaneko managed to convince her of this by saying that it could help in his development. After they had taken the watchman's phone and Rias had spoken to their leader, she nodded to Aquino, and she made a magic circle from her hand and exploded a part of the mansion, and some screams of pain sounded in the area of the explosion. Rias, very well, that will keep them busy for a while. Aquino and Kaneko search for Issei's parents and the leader of these men using their familiars. Kiba, I need you to create swords that we can use to trap the bandits, perhaps one that creates chains. The three nodded and obeyed their leader. 6 Onis together with a white kitten that Issei recognized. They quickly disappeared and roamed the mansion area to search for captured people while Kiba already had a new sword with the blade made of chains. A large number of bandits, around 40 in number, appeared emanating a red aura, They were overflowing with demonic power that was something strange to all of the ORC. It wasn't strange for humans to be using magic, but it was strange for them to use demonic power instead of their natural magic power. Kaneko Bucho, all of these men have demonic power in their bodies. Rias, I noticed, and that's strange. Remember to leave them alive, we'll need to call Beelzebub some later, she says, and the three nod and the queen and the rook spread their wings and took flight. Kaneko descended with force and caused an impact wave, making some of them be pushed away, and Akino made lightning fall next and restrained herself enough not to kill them, but when they started to move after an attack, she increased the power of the lightning and attacked them again until they were effectively unconscious. Kiba quickly used his sword, which expanded, creating chains that bound some of them together. The chain blade moved as the blonde wanted and split when it stopped wrapping the men. Issei, wow, are they always like this? Rias, well, Akino is already a sadomasochist, but Kaneko has been a bit impatient lately. Issei, right, I have to be careful what I say to those two. Rias was about to congratulate her peerage, but Akino calls her first after one of her familiars came near her. Akino Buchasama, my family didn't find Issei's parents, but we found others in a prison on a basement floor. Rias, wait, so they must have separated Issei's parents from them. Issei, what? This has to be some kind of joke. Why my parents? In the next instant, one of the bandits, who was unconscious, flashed again, and his neck twitched as the veins on his neck and face became visible. Bandit controlled, you bunch of weird monsters. How did you manage to defeat them all? Rias, so? Interesting. That's the voice of the person I spoke to on the phone. Are you using your lackey to communicate with us? I'm very interested in how a normal human could gain this kind of power, and yet only use it to steal money from honest people. Thug controlled, screw you. I'm just collecting on all these idiots who owe me money. It's their fault for being pathetic people with average lives. He's interrupted by a punch. Issei, enough talking. Where are my parents, you son of a? He grabs him by the shirt. Bandit controlled, oh, that's right. You're the son of that couple of idiots who wanted medicine for that old woman. Issei, old woman? Calm down, Riko Bachan. Think of an old woman with brown and platinum hair. Bandit controlled, but relax, I'll take you to them. An energy circle appeared below them, and Issei, and the bandit who was being used as a transmitter, began to quickly disappear from the place while the members of the Gremry nobility tried to get close to him. But the teleportation was so fast that when Rias was about to grab the brown one, he was already gone. Issei fell to the side as he saw a place full of boxes and warehouse objects. All that space were closed wooden boxes and storage structures. He didn't know what it was, but he could sense something dangerous. He saw the bandit who was with him remained unconscious and decided to look around to find something to get out of that place. But he didn't have to look very far. Just a few meters away from him was the Yakuza leader with 3 of his henchmen pushing his parents and other people into a place with bars. Kokujin, look at that, the baby of a couple of idiots who asked me for money. You were very lucky not to have been caught by my men earlier, but you won't be this time. Issei, hey, what do my parents have to do with all this? Kokujin, isn't it obvious? They didn't pay on time and now I've come to collect. Taking them as payment. This is business. I offered my services and they didn't keep their end of the deal. He laughed as some people cowered in fear, especially the Hayata couple who were despairing upon seeing Issei being present. However, the young teenager noticed something common in all the people. They were weak and seemed malnourished. His parents were different, probably because they had recently arrived in the place. But his father had a bruise on his face, and his mother had the expression of someone who had cried a lot in a short time. Seeing this, something in him snapped. Their look of despair mixed with guilt hit Issei in a flash. His left hand closed and the green jewel in it began to flash. He felt a slight itch in his eyes, but ignored it due to the anger and a strange feeling that grew along with it. Kokujin, they're just a bunch of desperate s who needed handouts for any useless thing. And now I can use their useless lives to save my skin from my supplier. Issei, you are so careless about these people's lives? Your armband flashes faster. Just to save your own ass? The glow becomes brighter. And you even take advantage of my family to do so. Glowing marks appear on the armband. Kokujin, of course I will, you stupid brat. This is how I make my living. It's their fault for being such idiots. Now stay quiet and let my men get you. Come on. The three bandits prepare themselves with their fists forward, and one of them tries to attack Issei with a right hook. Surprisingly, Issei lands a punch on the face of the one who is approaching him and ends up knocking him out. His armband is covered in a red aura and covers up to his elbow, while his jewel glows green. The other two bandits are scared, and their leader is surprised by the boy's feat and begins to worry. Issei, I'm already tired of this. Boosted gear boost. Boost. The aura of his sacred gear shatters into pieces of red light, revealing a new gauntlet shape as a red aura is emitted from it. But along with that, his eyes also changed. The left one was green and the right one was scarlet red. However, both of them had pupils like a reptile. Issei points the gauntlet with his fist clenched towards Kokujin while growling in anger and hatred. Issei, enough of this. Enough of this weakness. Now I won't stop until my fist goes through your face. His sacred gear shines brighter, and his aura thickens. The other two bandits are startled, and their leader despairs a little at the boy's new strength. Kokujin, this is getting even worse for me. Kokujin, what are you waiting for? Kill the kid! He orders, but the two of them don't even move properly. Issei charges towards the bandits with the jewel on his gauntlet shining brightly as two trails of energy, red and green, come out of Issei's eyes. He grabbed one of the bandits' faces and pressed him against a nearby wall, causing a hole to form. The other became a little more cautious as a voice appeared. Boosted gear boost. The red and green glow in his eyes increased as he released the thug he knocked out. The one who was still conscious tried to attack him from behind, but as soon as his fist collided with Issei's head, it simply tilted to the side and he received a left hook right below the neck. Their leader simply rubbed his eyes as he complained about his henchmen. Kokujin, good thing I have more of them. His handprint glows, and some of the bandits working for him appear through magic circles. Their eyes glowed red and a red aura appeared from their bodies. Their bodies lost their irises, turning completely white, and their veins and muscles swelled rapidly and abnormally. Now there were 10 bandits driven by demonic power who were going to fight Issei. The brown-haired man didn't seem to care much. His eyes were focused on their leader. But he had to focus on the others when they started advancing. Boosted gear boost. Issei charged towards them at the same time. He punched the first one and kicked the next one. One tried to grab him from behind, but he managed to avoid it with an elbow. Issei turned around with a quick movement, unleashing a spinning kick that hit 2 bandits at once. Another one came forward with a knife, but Issei dodged it nimbly, grabbing the attacker's wrist and twisting it until the weapon fell to the ground. He used the momentum to throw the bandit into the next one that was approaching, knocking them both down. The red aura surrounding the bandits seemed to intensify their attacks, but it also made them careless. Issei took advantage of every opening, striking with precision and force. With each boost of the boosted gear, his strength amplified, making his attacks even more devastating. One of the bandits tried to attack him with a powerful punch, but Issei blocked it with his arm and responded with a knee to the opponent's stomach, making him double over in pain. 2 more came next, and he delivered a high kick, followed by a cross punch that sent them flying backwards. Despite his strength, Issei began to feel fatigue building up. Every movement required more effort, and his breathing became heavier. He knew he couldn't let fatigue get the best of him, especially with the bandit leader watching his every move. He took a step back, trying to catch his breath, but the bandits gave him no respite. 3 of them approached at the same time. Issei dodged a kick, dodged a punch, and struck the third with a hook to the chin. However, the combination of attacks was starting to overwhelm him. Issei felt his body weaken momentarily. He had defeated many of the bandits, but there were still a few left, and the leader was ready to attack at any moment. He needed a strategy to end this fight quickly before his body completely gave in to fatigue. Boosted gear boost. This was the 4th boost that Issei got, and after that, he managed to grab one of the enhanced bandits and threw him on top of 2 others. Luckily, they were the last ones. He looked around seeing that they were all unconscious and smiled a little. Kokujin, what kind of freak are you? Issei, the kind that will rip your face off, he says coldly and runs towards him. He ran, preparing a punch with his sacred gear, but the gang leader caught the punch with his arms and threw a right hook at Issei. The brown-haired man retaliated with a punch and continued trying to attack him, but was either defended or received blows from the man. At one point, Kokujin's arm increased in mass and became disproportionately muscular and grabbed Issei's punch. He tried to punch with his sacred gear, but his other arm also became incredibly muscular and grabbed it as well. He tried to move, but all he got was a headbutt and a kick to the stomach. He was pushed back a few feet and held on to the injured area while he recovered. Boosted gear boost. Now he felt a little better, but a little disoriented. He didn't completely understand, but he felt that he was at the limit. Issei, it would be so nice if this thing came with an instruction manual. All I have is my intuition, Kokujin growled as he watched the boy get up. He was getting much more irritated with the boy getting up again and again. And he was known for getting tired very quickly. Kokujin, I've had enough of this kid, he says with his mark glowing. A red energy came out from their bodies and went straight to their boss, and his body began to change completely. His body grew to 3.4 meters, his muscles were almost bursting, the visible veins were in a similar situation, his hands seemed to be big enough to grab a person by the waist, and even his rib bones popped out of his skin. Issei was a little startled, but he positioned himself to fight. He saw the giant coming after him with very heavy steps, causing small craters as he walked, and when he tried to punch the brown-haired man, he missed badly. The young Hyades saw that he was very slow and tried to take advantage of that. He dodged an attack and the transformed man's fist caused a bang and a large hole in the ground. Issei widened his eyes and clicked his tongue. He could have easily been killed by this human trafficker. He continued to attack in a disorderly manner, and Issei managed to get an opening to punch him in the face, but without much success. Although he did manage to feel some pain in his hand, followed by a mental curse, Kokujin picked up a piece of the ground and threw it at Issei, who dodged it with great difficulty. Until his vision blurred and, staggering a little, he was unable to dodge a piece of debris thrown at him, and was hit hard. The brown-haired man was thrown by the debris and lost his breath for a moment as he pulled the piece of ground off of him. But that gave the gang leader enough time to reach him and grab the torso of his body. He tried to strike his giant hand, but all he managed to do was get thrown into the wall. He lay on the ground as the glow of his gauntlets slowly flashed. Kokujin walked up to Issei laughing and preparing for the finishing blow. The brown-haired young man was trying to get up and saw his opponent approaching. He coughed and saw some blood on his hand while feeling strange, especially on his gauntlet arm. He looked at the green jewel and noticed that it was blinking, but for a moment the jewel glowed brighter and a piece of information appeared in his mind. He waited for the right moment. He saw the gang leader raise his fist to strike him. However, using all his strength, his gauntlet shines so brightly that it blinds him and a new command emerges from it. Boosted gear explosion. A red and green aura covered the gauntlet completely. His eyes shone in the same colors and in a quick movement, he punched the gang leader in the area he could reach. The parts between the legs. At first, there was the blow, the next moment, the sound of private parts being destroyed, and then a deafening scream of pain. Kokujin JH! He fell to the ground as a large amount of blood came out from between his legs. Issei smiled as the idiot writhed on the ground and his body became a little thinner. His power was decreasing. Issei managed to get up and observed him for a while, until his gaze focused on his parents and several other trapped people. Issei, Mom! Dad! He started to run, but as he took the third step, boosted gear reset, he fell to the ground and began to spit out some blood. The jewel on his gauntlet lost its color and turned a dull green, and it was also a little heavy. He tried to stand his ground, but he spat out some more blood and began to crawl. Issei. He began to crawl towards the cell and with difficulty stood up as he tried to stay on his feet. He began to take small, heavy steps, while having some difficulty breathing. He manages to make his way to the cells and holds the door of one of them with his sacred gear. He looks at his parents who were clearly confused and lost, but he simply spoke to them in a tired tone. Issei, you guys, there's a lot to explain to me. Issei tried to remove the bars or at least crush them, but all he got was pain in his arm and a look of disappointment on his face. He was completely exhausted from that fight. He kept trying without much success, but stopped when a shiver ran down his spine. He looked back and saw that the gang leader was convulsing. A mark on his hand was glowing and seemed to burn his hand, and a dark red aura covered his body and changed him even more. Claws sprouted from his hands and feet. His teeth grew to become razor sharp and eventually burst through the flesh of his gums and lips. His nose and ears began to fall off, and his skin began to show deformities. He managed to stand up and his leg muscles exploded and the demonic aura began to cover the place where the flesh had been lost, as if it knew what to replace it with. The same happened when his arms exploded, showing only the bones and being replaced by a red and black energy. Kokujin monster brat. A distorted scream of rage was heard. He was running towards Issei, but stopped when a magic circle appeared when he was halfway and a group of people appeared from it. The Gremry nobility appeared. Rias, I see, are you okay? Issei Rias? How did you guys? He asked as he fell to the ground. He was finally giving in to his tiredness upon seeing the group again and taking control of the situation. Akino era, with a large amount of demonic magic and life energy moving towards the same point, it would be an insult to not notice. At the same time, a magic circle appeared in front of her and a bolt of lightning struck the transformed gang leader, and he almost fell from the blow. Kaneko, how grotesque. You speak with disgust. Kiba, despite not being very proficient in magic, it seems that demonic energy is being used as a steroid. Rias, that's right, Yudo, that's basically what's happening. She sees Issei struggling to stay awake. I see, don't worry about anything, we'll take care of it. Without much to say, Issei simply fell to the ground unconscious as his gauntlet disappeared. Rias could only sigh as she turned her attention to the gang leader who was clearly under contract with the stray devil. He had gotten up and began roaring in anger as he charged towards them. Kaneko used her hands to block a punch, and the ground beneath her cracked. Quickly, Kiba created two incredibly sharp swords and cut his arm into pieces. Blood dripped onto the ground and Akino had one of his legs frozen, and then broken by Kaneko. He fell to the ground with a crash, and Rias took the opportunity to destroy his other members with her power of destruction. As he screamed in pain, Rias went up and stomped on his chest hard, using a bit of demonic power to increase the stomp. Rias, now who is the demon that gave you this power? Kokujin, it's okay. Rias, look, I'm incredibly low on patience. So how about you open your mouth, or else do you want to experience how much more pain you can endure? Kokujin, lick me ga. The mark on his hand stretched like electricity through his body. In a few seconds, his eyes turned black and a different voice came from him. Kokujin? Gremry girl will mark you in Citri along with your brothers. The next instant his body twisted and he began to catch fire rapidly. Rias jumped and watched as his body was consumed by the flames and turned into ash. Rias simply sighed as she returned to the ground and looked at her peerage, then at Issei and then at the people trapped in the cells. Mainly Issei's parents. Rias, let's go. She spoke firmly. First, let's get these people out of here, then we'll call Sona, and if necessary, Mao Beelzebub. The person behind this must be a powerful stray devil, or a high-class devil. As she spoke, she and Akino put people to sleep with magic and then called the police pretending to be a person who had seen people being kidnapped by a car. Police quickly arrived at the mansion and all the people were rescued and taken to the hospital to then be sent back to their families. But the main ones were Issei and his family. The youngest brown-haired man was receiving treatment from the Citri clan's hospitals. Rias owed Sona a favor now, and of course, all of them had their memories changed, including Issei's parents. Now they only remembered a less magical version of everything that happened. They would now only remember their son fighting a gangster with a crowbar and beating him. They would prefer to erase this event from their minds. But Issei himself asked them to do it this way so that he could talk to them after he got out of the hospital. After this request, Issei slept for a while and in the meantime Rias decided to talk to Sona so they could resolve or find out what was happening. Sona, so it's quite unusual for you and your nobility to go on a rescue mission. Rias, unfortunately, I could only do that because there's a stray devil in charge of it. Sona, are you sure? From what you and your nobility said, all of that mafia leader's subordinates had some amount of demonic power. And considering their numbers, he should be at least between the middle class and upper class, and there are very few strays who live long enough to have that level of power. Rias, yes. But if my theory is correct, he was using that man and his gang to collect people through debts and absorb their life energy to increase his powers. Sona, not only those who were in debt, but from the looks of all those bandits, it seemed like they had aged to 8,090 years old in no time. It was very different from an ordinary death. Rias, and the main thing is that whoever it was, their goal is to overthrow my brother and sister from their positions as Mao. Sona, which is a dangerous statement to make. But it just reminds us to be vigilant. Rias, I'm already preparing. The members of the nobility will be given their own training regimen, and if everything goes well, Issei Hayato will also be part of it. Sona, he's fully unlocked his sacred gear, right? I'm sure he'll join you guys. Rias, it's for the best. Not only do we have a contract, but my intuition tells me that this is the best choice. He'll want to protect his parents, and he needs to get stronger. And now that I know what his sacred gear really is, I can help him in the right way. Sona analyzes her in more detail, and her gaze becomes firmer. Sona, is there anything you'd like to add, Rias? You seem very different. In fact, you've been acting differently these past few days. Rias, I'm just more determined. This recent event has completely opened my eyes to how careless I've been. Also, I have to call off that arranged marriage. She says this and then drinks what's left of her tea and lets out a sigh and relaxes her shoulders a little. Rias, since I have nothing more to report, I will be taking my leave. I need to meet with my nobility and then visit Hayato-kun in the hospital. Sona, okay. Good luck with that. After leaving, the redhead's face turned into a frown as she thought about the recent turn of events and the future probabilities. Once again, she was reminded that things were different and out of her control. Rias, that's bad. It looks like there's an unknown group that wants to attack me and Sona to lure out our older brothers. At least Issei has already released some of the power of his sacred gear, but he still needs more training. In her mind, the image of him in a hospital bed and worried about his parents flashed through her mind. Rias, not just him. We must strengthen ourselves much more to take away even the burden he will have. Break of time and space. In the hospital, Issei slept peacefully as the focus shifted from his room to his face. For a moment, tiny scales appeared around his eyes. They disappeared, but the next instant, his eyes opened with red irises. Time skipped days later. Issei POV on. It's been almost 2 weeks since I rescued my parents with the help of Ria-senpai and her group. When I recovered, I was surprised that I wasn't in a normal hospital, and even more so that Ria-senpai and Orizeno wait, Citra-senpai? Well, Kaicho was there with her. Apparently the hospital I was in belonged to her family, and was in the underworld, and she was also the leader of the other group of demons that was taking care of Ko. Honestly, if I wasn't so exhausted, I would have fried my brain with so many revelations in a row, but in a weirdly good way. I was too exhausted to focus on the important details. Sana-senpai noticed this and just gave a quick warning that I could be absent until I was completely healed, that my parents were safe, and that they would let the situation be investigated by experts. When the two of them left, I simply passed out feeling the weight of my body, but I didn't sleep for long. I had dreams where I was covered in fire and a red dragon stared at me, and whenever I woke up, the jewel of my sacred gear was visible on the back of my hand, but it disappeared shortly after I calmed down. It was one of the things that worried me the most when I was discharged and Ria-senpai helped me out of the hospital, and of course, my parents were also waiting for me. It hurt a little when I saw them, but that all went away when my mom hugged me. Of course, I said that we would need to talk about all of this later without them lying to me anymore, although Ria said she could resolve that as well. I just thanked her, but said I would need to resolve it with my parents first. That's why we were now alone at home, sitting in the living room. The pressure and coldness in the air was palpable. Issei POV off. The three Hayato were in the living room, sitting across from each other. The two adults were embarrassed, but they refused to look away from their own son. Issei was currently doing very well visually, but his head was spinning with the many questions he had to ask. But anyway, he asked the question he thought was most appropriate. Issei, how long has it been? Has Bachan been sick for a long time? Goro, it's been a few months now. Things started to get worse slowly. At first, it was just dizziness and fatigue, but soon she could barely get out of bed. After we realized that we couldn't afford the treatment legally, a proposal came up. A proposal from them. Miki, the mother-in-law, was getting worse day by day. She was not moving and was not responding well to the medications they were giving her. Issei, and so when the only option seemed to be to watch Bachan fade away, you accepted the proposal. Not out of greed. Out of desperation. You couldn't refuse, even knowing the risk. You were afraid that her time would run out before any solution could come. Gora Issei, I understand that you're upset with us, B. Issei, it's not just upset. I guess I'm a little disappointed. I don't know if it's because you guys are hiding it from me or because you're not trustworthy enough to tell me. I mean, I could use some help with anything, Mickey, and then you would slowly destroy yourself working to help us, and you would lie saying you were at school when in reality you weren't. The youngest of the family didn't respond. He just looked away a little at the truth. Gora's son, we made mistakes. A lot. We were weak. Fear took over us. Despair is a poison and it blinded us. When you see someone you love suffering, wasting away, and a way out appears, even if it's wrong, dirty, dangerous, you grab it. You grab it because the thought of doing nothing is even worse. Maybe that's not an excuse enough, but that's it. Issei just looked at the ground and thought. They were right that they couldn't afford the medicine or treatment needed for his grandmother. Although the two of them had made a very bad choice in a moment of tension, this ended up prolonging and improving his grandmother's condition a little, and his help wouldn't change much, but it would be better than leaving him in the dark. Issei, I just wanted to be there. I wish you guys had trusted me. Even if I couldn't save Bachan, at least I would have tried. I would have shared this burden with you guys. And now, he stops as he starts to think of something he could do, but then a thought strikes. What if someone else could help? Issei, actually, I think there's someone who can help. Gora, anyone? Issei, the student council president's family has a hospital. The one I was at along with some of the others who were kidnapped with you guys, and that's weird to say. Gora, at least the authorities are taking care of it. Issei simply looked away a little, but quickly returned to his normal expression. He knew very well that the ones taking care of everything were the devils. Rias had told him that to reassure him while he was still in the hospital. Issei, just let me talk to Kaicho. Bachan's current state is stable, but I think she can help. Goro and Mickey looked at each other for a moment, and thought the exact same thing. It's a better idea than ours. They both said he could try, but that they wanted to participate so they could follow the process from the beginning. Time break. Rias, I don't know, Issei. We can ask Sona for help, but I don't know if you'll be able to pay. Issei, but there has to be something that. Rias, I'm not talking about you guys not having enough money. I'm talking about you still needing to pay off your first settlements, find out what your parents were hiding, and save their lives. Issei stopped talking right after she finished and lowered his head as his hair covered part of his face. Rias also looked downcast as she couldn't freely help Issei without raising suspicion. He didn't have any special motive or resource that could benefit her. From the outside view, of course. Rias, of course, because your request led us to discover a possible stray devils organization, we can reduce the value of your contracts by a very considerable amount as a sort of reward. But even so, Issei, what if I join your team? Rias, Issei, I mean, I would basically be working for you, and if I'd become your servant, I might as well use that to help my parents in a better way because I will have access to better resources. Rias, giving up your humanity. Not to mention that you'll live much longer than anyone you know. It's almost 10,000 years, Issei. You can't just decide that right now. Issei, I was already thinking that long ago. Sigh, Rias-senpai, I'm not just doing this because I'm afraid of losing my grandmother. What I want is to ensure that I have enough strength to protect those close to me. Rias simply sighed in a defeated tone. This wasn't exactly how she imagined she would be able to convince Issei to join her peerage. Rias, why do I feel like trying to make you wait a little longer isn't an option? Issei, sorry, I'm known for being kind of an idiot and persistent. Rias, smiling, yes, I noticed. Then let's do this. She makes a magic circle appear on her ear. Akino, tell the others to come forward. Issei will be joining our nobility. Even though he couldn't hear properly, the brunette was almost certain he heard an incredibly excited scream, but he quickly dismissed it. Within a few minutes, a magic circle appeared in the middle of the room and the rest of Riyadh's demon team appeared from it. Akino was visibly excited while Kaneko and Kiba had their usual expressions, but also a little excited. Akino, Iskun will join us. Issei, that's a suspicious tone of voice. He thinks with a strange smile. Kiba, hello Isikun. Kaneko, hello senpai. Issei, hey, but why did everyone gather? Rias, well, let's just say that this is the first time someone has been recruited for real, so it becomes a bit special. She says, a bit embarrassed. Issei soon tilts his head in confusion, but Akino quickly explains. Akino Icegun, the truth is that some of us were in an incredibly bad situation before we became part of Rias's peerage. You're basically our first to be recruited from a formal means. Issei, oh geez. Sorry. Rias, don't worry about it. Sooner or later you would have to know about each of our stories. But this isn't the time for that. She makes a box with a red chessboard appear. Are you ready? Issei, yeah? I guess. Sort of, but I won't run away. Rias, very well. Grab a pawn piece. Don't worry about anything, you'll just feel a tingling sensation all over your body. The brown one nodded and a magic circle appeared beneath her feet at the same time as the pawn piece floated from her hand to her chest. Rias, Rias Gremory, order on behalf of my family that you, Issei Hayadu, be reborn as a devil and as my servant. I use this pawn piece for this. When she finished speaking, the red pawn piece was touching Issei's chest and glowed brightly. But that only lasted for a few seconds, until it fell to the ground without any shine. An awkward silence formed in the room as Issei and the others observed the red piece on the floor. Rias sighed, I should have known it wouldn't be that easy. Issei, what happened? Rias, simply put, I'm too weak to reincarnate you with just a pawn piece. Or maybe your sacred gear is too strong. Issei, I think it must be my sacred gear. I've been having strange dreams about a giant red dragon covered in fire. Akino era, that means your sacred gear has a spirit sealed within it. Icegun. Issei, what? There's a dragon on my arm. Kiba, technically, it's in the gauntlet that's in your soul. Kaneko, doesn't that mean the one he has is top-notch? Rias, it's possible. So let's try with 4. She approaches Issei and the pieces shine, but they don't enter his body. Rias again. Kiba, wow, what's the level of his sacred gear? Akino Bucho, I think you should use all the pieces. Rias, I would only need all of them if I were a Longinus. Really? She picks up all 8 pieces and brings them closer to Issei. The pieces begin to glow and float to the chestnut's chest. Their glow increases and the 8 red pawn pieces sink into Hayada's flesh as the glow of the magic circle surrounds him. At the same time, a magic circle appears in her hand above the area where the pieces were. As the glow faded, a pair of bat wings appeared on his back, surprising him. He stared at them as the wings fluttered slightly. He was unconsciously moving them and trying to control them. Issei, wow, that's so weird. Akino, you just gained new limbs, Icegun. It'll take some time to get used to it. Issei, right. So what happens now? Rias, first, let's decide on a training regimen, both physical and cognitive. Issei, wait, I have to study? Rias, then, the most important thing is for you to start handing out the flyers we use to make contracts. But right now, I'll call Sona to see if they can do anything for your grandmother. Issei, thank you, Bucho. Rias, pretending to be fine, don't worry, Issei. Now let me just settle this. Issei, huh? I didn't even say much, did I? Akino and Kaneko, oh no, this won't happen again. Kiba Bucho seems to be feeling uneasy. Maybe it's because she'll have to owe Sona Kaishu a favor. Rias, I need to fix this soon. Time skipped days later. It had been a turbulent few days, but the Hayada family had managed to adjust. Gora's mother was now awake, but the first thing she did when she woke up was to trick her own son into coming closer to her and put her middle and index fingers in Gora's eyes. Mickey helped her husband recover, but the old lady quickly said that her daughter-in-law would not escape her punishment. Ricky might be old, but that wouldn't stop her from talking sense into her family, even though she was grateful that they did it for her. In fact, when she learned about what Issei had done, she also wanted a cane to use on her grandson's head. Ricky, honestly, even though I'm grateful, that won't give you guys an excuse. The 3 sorry. Goro-kazan, we are very sorry for choosing the easy way out instead of working harder. Ricky sighed, it doesn't matter, son. I'm alive, you're alive. That's more than enough. But I'm still going to give you 2 a good beating. And you look at Issei. What were you thinking? Fighting a bunch of thugs using only a crowbar? Issei, I wasn't thinking at the time. Ricky, oh gods, you're just like your grandfather. And the worst part is that it's as good as it is bad. Issei, good to know I inherited the family's qualities. Ricky simply laughed at her grandson's speech. She wrapped her grandson in a hug, and after she let go she pulled her son and daughter-in-law along. Ricky, I'm so glad you're okay. But I'm still angry. Goro, I understand, Kazan. Mickey, at least you're okay, Kazan. Issei Bachan, do you need anything? Ricky, just sleep. I'm still tired and I don't like the food at this place. Issei, yeah, hospital food s. Ricky, this is my grandson, understanding me quickly. Speaking of which, are you missing school? Mickey, not for lack of will. We had to put our lives on hold for a bit, because of what happened. Goro, fortunately, we'll be able to go back to work and study tomorrow. Ricky, I think that's good. I hope you don't stop your life because of all this. Issei, don't worry, Bachan. The school was temporarily shut down because some of the kidnapped victims, one is a former teacher, and another is a parent of a student. Goro, not to mention that some of these people are from other cities. Mickey, it's a shame, but at least we have a little time to process everything that happened. Ricky, in other words, plenty of time for you to spend with me. The three, of course, she would focus on that. Time break. After a few days, Issei returned to Ko Academy. He kept in touch with Rias while he and his family took care of his grandmother. The redhead even asked if she could come over, but Hayata said that she didn't need to worry about it. He didn't want to bother the redhead anymore with problems that he could solve. He found it strange that she seemed disappointed for some reason. But anyway, now that he was back at the academy, he could return to some normality. Apart from the fact that he was now a devil under Rias' protection. In addition, some of Koa's other students were all over him with their conspiracy theories. About him being involved with the Yakuza, his family being in debt to drug dealers, or him being related to someone in the mafia. He almost punched someone, but he couldn't hold back when Matsuda and Motohama also got involved with their nonsense. At least he could save himself when it came time to go to the occult club. At least the members there had some empathy. Issei, that pair of idiots. Akino era, I'm surprised you only took a few hits. Issei, well, I controlled myself a bit. If I had used my real strength I would have knocked his teeth out. Kiba, but that would bring more trouble to you. Issei sigh, yeah. Rias, changing the subject, how are you adapting? Any changes with your sacred gear? Issei, no, it's been working the same way, except for that skill, explosion. And my magic usage hasn't been very encouraging. A few days after Issei left the hospital, Akino gave him a crash course on how to use magic, along with some lessons on demon society. After 2 days of trying, all he managed to do was produce a small sphere of green energy the size of a grain of rice. Before he could cry about feeling like an idiot, Rias told him not to worry because of 2 reasons. The first, and most important, was that because all 8 pawn pieces had been used, she had to seal away some of his power because his body was too weak to withstand the power of a large amount of pieces. Although this only moved his disappointment to another point, his underdeveloped physical appearance. But she said that with training, he could increase his demonic power reserves. Though he should focus on developing his sacred gear. Which was the second reason she told him not to worry. The gauntlet, now named Boosted Gear, was one of the 13 Longinus. One of the most powerful sacred gears created by the biblical god, capable of doubling the user's power every 10 seconds. Of course, this depended on the user's stamina, but as long as Issei trained enough, he could increase his power. This made Hayata quickly cheer up, even if only a little, as he realized that it all came down to an old intensive training routine. That's why he spent all his free time, when he wasn't with his parents, doing extreme physical training. Of course, he couldn't do something simple. A demon's physique was different from a human's, so he needed to do heavier things. Luckily, Rias got him some really heavy clothes to do Dragon Ball-style exercises. She almost made him cry with happiness over it. But now the most important thing arrived today. The day of making contracts with humans. And the brown one was more than ready, even after having made deliveries with his bike in the previous days. Rias, alright everyone, it's time to make our contracts. Issei, to the circle. Issei, hello everyone. As he stood in the middle of the magic circle, it began to glow and a light enveloped the room. Issei closed his eyes as he thought about what he had to do, but decided. Issei, come on Hayata, do your best. Because now, your old dreams can be achieved. Thanks for listening to my video. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe and comment below your favorite part. Sayonara, see you in the next video.